Boom! Ta! Boom! A deadly whistling sound spread throughout the atmosphere. When Ren Yan would probably be exterminated in the blink of an eye. When Ren Yan's face turned deathly pale and blood started to drip from his mouth under the pressure. That sword was incredibly powerful. Disperse! At that moment, a strong and pure chi came from the sky and collided into that deadly sword chi. The rumbling noise caused by their collision was unceasingly resonating in the entire gorge. Besides, a silhouette had landed in front Lin Feng. It was the old woman who was Ren Yan's teacher. "It's enough. You won," said the old woman in an indifferent tone yet sounding like she wouldn't tolerate any resistance. Lin Feng's pupils shrank. How ridiculous. Was that all? He had won. But when Ren Yan could continue behaving like before if he didn't die. "Old woman, have you forgotten our agreement?" said Protector Bei sounding annoyed. "Don't worry, I haven't forgotten about it, but when Ren Yan is my only disciple. Even if I am losing face now, I cannot even bear the thought of losing my only student and seeing him die." The old woman's words deeply moved the crowd. However, she said to Protector Bei that he didn't have to worry, and that she hadn't forgotten their agreement. She had interrupted Lin Feng and Ren Yan's battle and had saved Ren Yan. Wasn't that a bit contradictory? But the whole crowd didn't pay attention to that. They were still lost in thoughts recalling Lin Feng's sword a moment before. Lin Feng had definitely defeated Ren Yan, the top-ranked elite disciple. At that moment, Lin Feng actually became the strongest of all the elite disciples. Nan Gongling had already stood up. He was staring blankly at the fighting stage of the life and death arena. He was stupefied, but in his heart, he felt extremely gratified by that amazing young disciple. Lin Feng was just amazing. "Alright, the elite disciple exam is over for today. Everybody can leave." Protector Bei was waving at people. He also didn't argue with the old woman, which surprised a multitude of people. The elite disciple exam was over? Everybody was staring at Nan Gongling. Nan Gongling was staring at Protector Bei, who was just nodding. Hee, brilliant. The elite disciple exam is fascinating. There is no need to finish that early. At that moment, Duan Tianlang said these words while scratching his ear, which made Nan Gongling frown. "Patriarch, let the crowd disperse. Dissolve the entire sect." Protector Bei suddenly sounded so solemn. The entire crowd was astonished. Disperse the crowd and dissolve the sect? What was going on? Many people in the crowd suddenly had a bad premonition. And then Duan Tianlang's laughter spread in the atmosphere. "No need to waste time. Those at the periphery of the mountain are already dead. Nobody can leave. The best option is to stay here." "Duan Tianlang, what do you mean?" Nan Gongling suddenly seemed extremely strict and firm. He was intensely staring at Duan Tianlang. "What do I mean? Nan Gongling, do you think that I have come here only to watch the best elite disciples of the Yunhai sect fighting at the elite disciple exam? You are way too naive," said Duan Tianlang coldly, and then said, "I said it already. I came here today because last time the Yunhai sect refused to hand over some of its best disciples. I came here personally as a delegate of His Majesty." Boom! His words were detonating in people's brain. The ground was faintly shaking, which stupefied everybody. Besides, it seemed like it was shaking more and more. Not too long after, it seemed like the entire gorge was about to cave in. The noises were becoming louder and louder, more and more intense, and were probably covering the entire area of the Yunhai sect. FFFFFF. Protector Bei sighed in a sorrowful way. He realized that these people had actually come to the Yunhai sect with harmful intentions. The ground kept shaking and a huge cloud of dust was rising up in the air. At that moment, the crowd looked up in the air and saw a great number of Wuxia armored cavalry at the top of the gorge. They were carrying bows on their back and looked like they were ready to attack at any moment. Wuxia armored cavalry? Lin Feng's eyes shrank. How come the armored cavalry were suddenly surrounding the area? Lin Feng glanced at the armored cavalry, and then glanced at Lu Fei, but at that moment Lu Fei seemed as surprised as him. What was going on? What had happened? Lu Fei also glanced at Lin Feng. These were her father's personal army, and they were surprisingly surrounding her father's sect. Could it be that my father gave them orders himself? Is it even possible? Lu Fei was thinking and looked extremely perplexed. She thought that it would be ridiculous. Nobody could understand her father better than her. And her father would have never ordered such a thing. What was going on? Duan Lang. Nan Gongling looked enraged and furious. His eyes, filled with murderous intentions, were fixedly staring at Duan Tianlang. Nan Gongling, no need to stare at me like this. These Qixia armored cavalry are your dear friends, Lu Songlan's personal army. If there is a problem, talk to him, not to me. Duan Tianlang was smiling evilly. The ground was still shaking. In an instant, the top of the stormy gorge was full of Qixia armored cavalry. There were so many of them that not a drop of water could trickle through. The stormy gorge was completely surrounded by Qixia armored cavalry, and the situation really looked critical and dangerous. Many disciples of the Yunhai sect were scared and shaking. What did these people want to do? In the stormy gorge around the life and death arena, the beginning of a great turmoil was about to happen. When Ren Yan was in a dire situation as blood dripped from the side of his mouth. He was injured from that strike, and if this battle continued, then he would surely lose his life. However, events had unfolded to his advantage. Suddenly Duan Tianlang started to move down from the viewing platform. All eyes fell onto him as he slowly stepped down. Chu Qing, who was next to him, looked at him anxiously. He surprisingly was moving towards the fighting stage of the life and death arena. He was extremely powerful. It seemed like each of his steps made the entire atmosphere vibrate. He was slowly moving towards the life and death arena, and then stepped on the highest fighting stage. He was walking slowly as if he was having a peaceful walk in a flower garden. People of the Yunhai sect, please listen. Duan Tianlang glanced at everybody and said in a loud voice, I, Duan Tianlang, represent His Majesty. My duty is to select some outstanding disciples who will join the holy courtyard of Shuiyu. However, your patriarch has refused to help His Majesty's aim. These days, His Majesty is furious and wants the Yunhai sect to disappear. Duan Tianlang's harsh words penetrated into everybody's soul. He wanted the Yunhai sect to disappear from the Shuiyu country? How could he make such a powerful sect as the Yunhai sect disappear? There was only one solution. Exterminate everybody within the sect. These people wanted to exterminate every single member of the Yunhai sect. Everybody was panic-stricken. The Yunhai sect members had joined the sect for the sake of cultivation to become stronger. Being killed for no reason would be an injustice. However, His Majesty is willing to show mercy. He's giving a chance to every single one of you, ordinary disciple, elite disciples as well as core disciples, whose names are on the ranking list, to accept our offer and leave the Yunhai sect to join the holy courtyard of Shuiyu. The others will not be required. Duan Tianlang's words detonated in everybody's brain. The crowd felt numb after hearing these words. Leave the Yunhai sect? Only those who were ranked disciples. Those who were not ranked felt frustrated in their own lack of power. They wouldn't have the chance to enjoy the best weapons and skills. They may even die here because of the sect they had chosen. Nan Gongling, who was sitting on the viewing platform, didn't look happy to hear this announcement. They wanted to exterminate his beloved Yunhai sect? Did he hear them correctly? The Yunhai sect had already been existing for 1,000 years. It had gone through many great crises, but probably never as serious as the current situation. These were earth-shattering events for the sect. The Haoyu sect, the Ice and Snow Mountain Village, the Emosho sect as well as Duan Tianlang had come to the Yunhai sect to completely wipe its roots from the Shuiyu country. Obviously, all of this originated from the imperial clan. They were the ones who had assigned Duan Tianlang to carry out these tasks. The Yunhai sect had become the imperial clan's prey. Why choose our sect, the Yunhai sect? Nan Gongling sounded cold as ever. He was intensely and fixedly staring at Duan Tianlang, wishing he could tear apart his flesh and bones. Would the Yunhai sect disappear under Nan Gongling's reign? Nan Gongling, you really don't understand, said Duan Tianlang while smiling coldly. If you say that this is because I offended your son, I will not believe it. I think that even you wouldn't believe it. The Haoyu sect, the Ice and Snow Mountain Village. You all came for such a stupid and absurd reason. Nan Gongling glanced at Chu Qing and Han Shuetian and met their gazes. You're right. The Haoyu sect also refused the request at the beginning, but I told them that I would make the entire Yunhai sect join me or be destroyed. Then they immediately accepted. Duan Tianlang stupefied everybody in the crowd. Make the entire Yunhai sect join him or be destroyed. I knew it, said Nan Gongling with a sad smile on his face. When all these people had come, Nan Gongling had tried to guess why Chu Qing would also come along. Then why the Yun Hai sect? It's easy to guess because the Yun Hai sect is the weakest and the easiest to defeat from all of the great powers. You just have to let some of your best disciples of the sect leave to join me, then I may show mercy upon your sect. You're a liar. A soft voice said spread in the air. It came from a lithe and graceful silhouette in the crowd which was slowly moving towards the fighting stage of the life and death arena. Her facial expression revealed intense and bitter hatred. Duan Tianlang, you're lying. Lu Fei's beautiful cheeks suddenly seemed very pale. She was filled with anger and indignation. If you chose the Yun Hai sect, Duan Tianlang, it's because you are jealous of my father. You envy him. You envy his strength and talent. That is why you chose the Yun Hai sect and plotted against it. You lied and made the Qi Shui armored horses come with me beforehand. All of this is because you want my father to suffer because you are jealous that you can never be his match. Lu Fei was filled with hatred and then she added coldly, Duan Tianlang, you are shameless. You're disgusting. Many people were astonished when they heard Lu Fei's words. In the Yun Hai sect, nobody knew exactly what Lu Fei's status really was, or who her father was. From what Lu Fei was saying, it seemed that her father had a really high position within the country, especially if amazing and famous cultivators such as Duan Tianlang envied him. Besides, what were the Qi Shui armored horses? They were the private troops of Lu Fei's father? The divine arrow Lu Tsonglan. Many people said that together. In the Shuiyu country, it was said that there was a man even more glorious and famous than Duan Tianlang. That man could only be Lu Tsonglan and his divine arrow. At some point, Lu Tsonglan was the leader of a huge army composed of thousands of cultivators, and they had saved a city from destruction. They had killed tens of thousands of enemy troops. An arrow on his back, one man. He had led an entire army on his own. He had killed a huge amount of enemy soldiers, and when he had come back, he was covered with blood and fell into a coma. The divine arrow was a symbol of the Shuiyu country. Besides, the Qi Shui armored horses made enemies panic-stricken and terrified. What made everybody proud was that Lu Tsonglan was a member of the Yun Hai sect, and even though he had been helping the imperial clan, he had always been loyal to the Yun Hai sect and had always been proud of being one of its members. Lu Fei's family name was Lu. Many people would adore her even more for that. Fei, how can you even possibly think that way of Uncle Duan Tianlang? Your father and I are bosom friends. We're like brothers. How could I be jealous of him? Duan Tianlang was shaking his head and smiling. He was looking at Lu Fei with eyes full of affection. That made everyone feel even more scared. Lu Fei's father and he were bosom friends? Nan Gongling thought that Duan Tianlang was being extremely treacherous. It made him want to vomit. You and my father are bosom friends like brothers? Yet you want to exterminate the Yun Hai sect and all of my father's friends and fellow members? Lu Fei's eyes, which were filled with disgust, were staring deeply at Duan Tianlang. Fei, that is what His Majesty wants. If I exterminate the Yun Hai sect, it will be only because His Majesty has ordered it. This is nothing personal. The Yun Hai sect of today is not the Yun Hai sect of tomorrow. What it wants to do now would just be hindering some disciples' progress, especially the geniuses. Leaving would be a great opportunity for them to learn and benefit from the best resources available. Besides, I firmly believe that they will all be pleased. If you don't believe me, just come and look. Duan Tianlang had a smile on the corner of his mouth. He turned around and looked at the entire crowd. His facial expression became ice cold. What I said was all true. Ranked disciples who are willing to leave the Yun Hai sect, please immediately move over there to the Qi Shui armored horses. Please remember that you don't have much time. The entire crowd suddenly became very agitated. A lot of people were looking at Nan Gongling and the elders of the sect. Those who are willing to leave, please go already. Don't stay within my Yun Hai sect. Protector Bei had suddenly said that while waving his hand. Protector Bei. Nan Gongling was looking at Protector Bei, as if he couldn't understand what the old man meant. Patriarch, this is their own decision. Protector Bei looked sad as if his heart was broken. It was hard to abandon ranked disciples. They were all extremely talented. Besides, someday they were likely to rise to even greater heights. What a pity. All right, said Nan Gongling, who knew how sad Protector Bei felt. Therefore he didn't refute and then nodded. Thank you, patriarch and elders of the sect. Many people, when they saw Nan Gongling nod, started moving towards the Qi Shui armored horses. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of disciples were moving towards the Qi Shui armored horses. Besides, the number of disciples moving towards the horses was way above the number of actually existing ranked disciples. Many unranked disciples were trying to pass themselves as one of the ranked disciples of the Yun Hai sect. Stop there. Duan Tianlang had a big smile on his face. Fei, you see? These people understand that I'm giving them a great opportunity, and they cherish and appreciate it. Therefore, they are happy to leave the Yun Hai sect for something better. Nan Gongling looked sad. He had the feeling that he was being abandoned by too many people. Lin Feng, you were right. When Yun Hai sect's disciples are weak, they are not treated well enough. We don't attach enough importance to them. Only when they become strong enough, we attach enough importance to them, for the glory of the sect. Nan Gongling was staring at Lin Feng. His voice was filled with sorrow. He hadn't realized these things until he saw all these disciples willing to leave. His heart was broken after watching all of the disciples who had wanted to leave. Hard times were the best moment to see who would remain loyal to the sect and who would attach no importance to it at all. Unfortunately, I found that out too late. If I had found that out 10 years earlier, maybe things would have been different. I would already have accomplished great things like Lutsong Lan. At that moment, Lin Feng was expressionless. He also wouldn't have thought that things would turn out this way. However, Lin Feng admired Nan Gongling. Nan Gongling cared about the Yun Hai sect more than himself. For you it's too late. For him he still has a chance. If he wishes to go to the holy courtyard of Shuiyu, then we would welcome him with open arms. For you it's too late. For him he still has a chance. If he wishes to go to the holy courtyard of Shuiyu, then we would welcome him with open arms. Duan Tianlang was looking at Nan Gongling and Lin Feng. He knew that Lin Feng was a real genius. In comparison to all of the other disciples of the Haoyu sect and the Yun Hai sect, Lin Feng definitely stood at the top. He was such a talented disciple that he had to go to the holy courtyard of Shuiyu. Of course, there was still Wen Yen as well. Even though he had been defeated by Lin Feng, he was still extremely strong and his fighting style was indeed lethal. If Lin Feng hadn't been there, then Wen Yen would have been the most outstanding disciple of the Yun Hai sect. Even if they destroy the Yun Hai sect, they will never kill Lin Feng. He's way too important. He's a unique genius which is only seen once. Lin Feng has a bright future with endless possibilities. Everybody was amazed by Lin Feng's talent and envied him. What did they have to do to be as respected by others as Lin Feng? Besides, it really seemed like the situation was as Lin Feng had described. In the Yun Hai sect, those who were weak were bullied and threatened. So the Yun Hai sect had nothing to offer to those whose strength hasn't manifested itself yet. You too, you just have agreed to my terms and the doors of the holy courtyard of Shui, you will open themselves for you. There is no need to repeat myself, but statement that the training conditions will be much better than in the Yun Hai sect is a fact. Duan Tianlang was looking directly at Lin Feng and Wen Yen. That holy courtyard of Shuiyu again? Lin Feng thought about the fact that Lu Fei had already solicited him a few times and wanted him to join the holy courtyard of Shuiyu, but he still hadn't given his reply. He wouldn't have thought that somebody would ask him to go there again and in such a short period of time. He definitely never thought it would be under these conditions. Wen Yen looked rigid. He then glanced at the old woman who was standing on his side and then at Duan Tianlang. He had an evil smile on his face. My teacher is great and the Yun Hai sect respects me. Would it be right for me to leave? Thought Wen Yen. The old woman had prevented Lin Feng from killing Wen Yen. Wen Yen could finally repay all of the things she had done for him. Wen Yen is extremely strong and there is no doubt to his talent. Staying here would just be a waste of his talent. He should definitely go. Even though he was defeated by Lin Feng, there is nothing to be ashamed when comparing such geniuses. The whole crowd was looking at Wen Yen, who was furiously looking at Duan Tianlang. The history of the Yun Hai sect dates back 1,000 years, and you want to destroy it in the blink of an eye. How tragic, how pitiful. The Yun Hai sect. While saying this, Wen Yen had released his blue bamboo beast spirit. At full speed, He launched himself at Duan Tianlang while shouting loudly, "The Yunhai sects will live on through me. I will become stronger than anyone within the sect has before." When he finished his sentence, Wen Renyan had already landed next to Duan Tianlang, while looking as evil as always. The entire crowd was surprised. They didn't know what Wen Renyan was doing, and they only saw an evil look in his eyes. He was going to betray the sect and join the holy courtyard of Shuiyu. What a shameless person. He really doesn't care about losing face. How can the sect create such disgusting and shameless person? Many disciples and elders were cursing at him. Haha. Duan Tianlang paused and then said while smiling, "A wise man submits to circumstances. Wen Renyan, do not worry because in the future you will never be forced into such a sorry state." Evil little monster. The old woman looked furious and released an extremely cold qi, and then she rushed towards Wen Renyan. At the moment when the old woman was passing next to Duan Tianlang, he swung down towards her using his gigantic sword. A loud thunderous impact spread through the life and death arena. The body of the old woman was thrown back to where she was initially standing, and she couldn't help but feel a sensation of fear fill her heart. "Teacher, don't worry. In the future I will become much stronger than you ever could. I will never disappoint you." When Ren Yen was looking at his teacher with eyes filled with arrogance, the old woman who was forcefully repressing her injuries could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood after hearing these words. It had been a long time since she had seen the sight of her own blood. "Don't be impatient." Duan Tianlang was staring at the old woman while watching her movements closely, and then looked at Lin Feng and said, "What about you? Will you accept my offer like Wen Ringyan? The Yunhai sect has made you suffer greatly. Is there even any reason for you to give it face?" Lin Feng looked at Duan Tianlang with a calm look as if everything that had happened did not affect him in any way. It was impossible to remove the serenity covering Lin Feng's face. Everybody in the crowd was staring at Lin Feng while impatient to hear his answer. "Lin Feng, he's right. The Yunhai sect has made you suffer so much. You should go with him. I will not try to prevent you from leaving. Nobody in the Yunhai sect will blame you for leaving after everything that has happened." Nan Gongling had spoken these words as he stood motionless on the viewing platform. When Ren Yen had accepted, so it would be normal for Lin Feng. When Ren Yen had been treated completely differently to Lin Feng. He had received a lot of attention from the sect at the beginning. He had been protected, admired and respected by all of the elders. He had also become the direct disciple of a powerful teacher. Lin Feng was different. He owed nothing to the Yunhai sect. Nan Gongling hoped from the bottom of his heart that Lin Feng would stay, but he also could blame him if he wanted to leave, because he had no reason to stay. Even if Lin Feng accepted Duan Tianlang's proposition, Nan Gongling wouldn't blame him, but he would definitely be depressed. "You are asking Wen Ren Yen and me at the same time. Do you think that I would reply positively knowing that he might go as well?" said Lin Feng with a cold tone. Lin Feng's reply stupefied Wen Ren Yen. Wen Ren Yen could not suppress the hatred which had appeared on his face when he heard the words from Lin Feng's mouth. In this world, enemies cannot be enemies forever. Even if you hate him, I will give you both the same chance to join the holy courtyard of Shuiyu, and the possibility to advance your cultivation in such an amazing environment, where you will receive the best resources. In few years you can kill him if that is your wish. I will stay out of personal grudges. All that matters is if you have the strength to achieve your goal. "No," said Lin Feng while shaking his head. "If you have me, then you don't have him. If you have him, then you don't have me." Lin Feng was strict with his words, which made Duan Tianlang frown. "What do you want then?" said Duan Tianlang. "I want to kill him right now." Lin Feng's ruthless words had surprised Wen Ren Yen. "That bastard. Are there no other solutions?" asked Duan Tianlang. "No other solution will ease my anger. This is the only option," replied Lin Feng. Duan Tianlang was surprised and after a small moment said, "All right. But first you have to promise that you will join us. Once you have joined our side and agreed to my offer, then I will kill him where he stands." Boom. When Ren Yen had the impression that a bomb had detonated in his brain, Lin Feng just had to agree for Duan Tianlang. To kill him? He was betraying the sect which had nurtured him, and what was going to happen in the end? How ridiculous. Everybody watching felt a cold shiver run down their spines. Surprisingly, Duan Tianlang attached so much importance to Lin Feng that he suddenly was ready to kill Wen Renyan to make Lin Feng join them. It looked like Wen Renyan was going to die a miserable death. "No. You must kill him first," replied Lin Feng, shaking his head as firm as before. "If I kill him, will you go back on your promise?" said Duan Tianlang while shaking his head as well. "Are you trying to use me?" Lin Feng smiled when he heard Duan Tianlang's words. "You are very smart, but you are also very heartless. You are good at manipulating others to your will. I don't like those types of people." "So do you mean that you are refusing my offer?" said Duan Tianlang in a slightly angry tone. "Indeed," said Lin Feng as he indifferently nodded, which made everyone watching astonished. Lin Feng had surprisingly refused to go to the holy courtyard of Shuiyu. He had even tried to trick Duan Tianlang into killing Wen Renyan. Everybody was looking at Lin Feng with a perplexed expression. Nobody understood why Lin Feng would act in such a way. "Wen Renyan, did you see? You are a piece of trash. When you are not needed anymore, nobody will hesitate to throw you away. Even if you stay alive, you are doomed to forever live in my shadow." Lin Feng's words were like sharp blades which cut Wen Renyan's pride into tiny little pieces. His arrogance and pride had just been crushed. He would never forget this moment. That's right. Lin Feng just had to nod once and Wen Renyan would be killed. How laughable was his situation. "That's enough," said Duan Tianlang, who was now in a bad mood after being used. Staring at Lin Feng, he said, "I admire your courage, but could you give me your reason for refusing my offer?" Duan Tianlang thought that Lin Feng hated the Yunhai sect because of everything that he had said. He could easily kill Wen Renyan at any time if it would convince Lin Feng to join them. "Even though the Yunhai sect itself doesn't mean much to me, I have a debt of gratitude owed for Protector Bei's recognition and appreciation. He cares about me deeply and has continued to protect me. Besides, in the Yunhai sect I have friends who are like brothers to me. How could I ever abandon them for worldly items?" Lin Feng still had a very calm look on his face. He then added with an indifferent tone, "I, Lin Feng, have my own talents and my loyalty cannot be bought." His voice wasn't loud, but everybody heard and understood him clearly. "Protector Bei cares about me. How could I ever abandon them for worldly items?" These were sentences that the entire crowd of disciples would never forget, just like the sound which came from the drums on the precipice of Zhanggu. This would be something which they would never forget in their lifetime. Although they sounded like simple words, it was not something that just anyone could have said under these circumstances. At that moment, many people thought of Protector Bei and realized how important he was to the sect. Protector Bei was really proud of two things in his life. The first one was that he had accepted Lu Tsonglan as his student, and the second was Lin Feng. That young disciple's words had profoundly touched him. "Protector Bei, you don't make mistakes. I have eyes, but I did not recognize Mt Tai, and now I realize that we have such a wonderful disciple within the sect." Nan Gongling could not help but praise Protector Bei and scold himself. The old woman was also looking at Protector Bei and said, "You have a much better eye than I do. I'll remember our agreement." "Don't worry," said Protector Bei while nodding, which made a bunch of people curious. They were all wondering what these two protectors were talking about. People could hear about their agreement but still didn't know what they were talking about. At that moment, Duan Tianlang had a furious look on his face. To be honest, I am surprised by your decision. To be honest, I am surprised by your decision. Duan Tianlang had a cold smile on the corner of his mouth as he stared at Lin Feng. "You are a genius. I really appreciate your talent and battle ability. I offered you a great opportunity, but you are not willing to seize it. It is very important for you to understand that because you are a genius, you will not be treated like other people who refuse this opportunity. If you refuse, I will have no choice but to act rashly. I will not let you off, and I will not be able to let you continue living. If you refuse, you are doomed." Duan Tianlang suddenly filled with killing intent as a strong qi was released and shot towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng's expression didn't change from his usual calm expression. He obviously understood what Duan Tianlang meant, but he had already understood the consequences of his choices. Some decisions in life needed to be chosen carefully as it could lead a person to their own death. "Duan Tianlang, I will not allow you to touch him." At that moment, Lu Fei suddenly jumped in front of Lin Feng to prevent Duan Tianlang from attacking Lin Feng. She looked extremely furious at his actions. She had always thought that Lin Feng was a pervert with hidden intentions. She hadn't thought that Lin Feng could say such touching and moving things while his life was at stake. He had now shown his true character. Everything he had said so far had deeply moved Lu Fei. She had discovered a new aspect of his personality that she had never noticed before. Lin Feng was such a great talent that he couldn't die. It would be such a pity if he died here under these circumstances. At that moment, the situation was critical for the Yunhai sect. Lu Fei was using her own life to stand up for the sect and protect it. She had hoped that she could avoid the worst possible outcome. Fei Fei, he must die. Duan Tianlang sounded really firm in his resolution. I will not allow you to touch him, said Lu Fei as she grew more and more furious. She stared at Duan Tianlang with evil eyes. Fei Fei, why do you care so much about him? What does he mean to you? Duan Tianlang's son Duan Han was staring at Lin Feng. He had recognized him from their earlier encounter. On the day which he came to the Yunhai sect with Wuxia armored cavalry, they had stopped because Lu Fei knew him. However, she had said they were only fellow disciples of the same sect and nothing more. But at that moment, Lu Fei was protecting Lin Feng with her life. Duan Han was troubled. He was a genius and had always hoped that Lu Fei would become his wife. Our relationship is none of your business, Lu Fei said while intensely staring at Duan Han. Then she glanced at all the Wuxia armored cavalry and sighed. You should all listen to me. I don't care about who you are, your status, or even whose orders you are acting upon. I will not allow you to touch him. Otherwise I will inform my father and his army will come to take care of you. Duan Han's face looked extremely ugly at that moment. He then said in an extremely cold tone, Fei Fei, do you like this young man? It's none of your business, said Lu Fei furiously. Whom she liked was none of Duan Han's business. Duan Han was stupefied. His expression changed from shock to a face which resembled an evil demon. He then said in an ice-cold tone, All right. Now there is a second reason for him to die, Lin Feng. You're always saying long and righteous words. What the hell are you doing now hiding behind that girl? Lin Feng was smiling wryly. Lu Fei was always protecting him. Lin Feng moved in front of Lu Fei, took her hand and whispered, You're my girlfriend, how could I let you protect me? Lu Fei looked embarrassed but a smile had appeared on her face. That bastard, when had he learned to be a gentleman? But Duan Han's face became even uglier as he shouted, Your girlfriend? What gives you the right to say that Lu Fei is your girlfriend? Lin Feng, do you dare to come and fight with me? Lin Feng, don't, said Lu Fei with a hint of worry. Lu Fei pulled on Lin Feng's sleeve to stop him. She clearly knew how strong Duan Han was. His power was even more frightening than that of Wen Renyan. His sword was infinitely more powerful than what Lin Feng had displayed earlier. But how could Lin Feng retreat now? Don't you dare, laughed Duan Han. Lin Feng moved towards Duan Han. Duan Han was about 18 years old. Even if he was extremely strong, there was no reason for Lin Feng not to be able to fight against him. Humph, all right, snorted Duan Han. He had an evil covering his face. As he held his sword, a great quantity of sword chi emerged and was released in the atmosphere. That sword chi was getting more and more intense while it violently whistled through the atmosphere. Slowly it started to gather another power. Sword force. The entire crowd was stupefied. That was sword force which he was using. Duan Tianlang's son Duan Han was using the same force as Lin Feng. The sword force he was releasing was cutting through the atmosphere and filling the entire arena. The chi from his sword was even stronger than that of Lin Feng, but Lin Feng's sword force was much more powerful than that of Duan Han. Lin Feng was surprised. He unsheathed his sword and just like Duan Han, he released his sword force. TSK, a sword master doesn't necessarily need to use his sword, pay attention, said Duan Han. Suddenly, Duan Han moved his hand and it seemed like his sword chi was suddenly mixing with the chi contained within the earth and the heavens. His sword was glowing as chi could circulate in and out of his sword. The crowd was stupefied. It looked like pure chi was being released from his sword. How could Duan Han be so monstrously powerful? It had to be a skill, an extremely strong and powerful skill. Sword! Duan Han shouted loudly. An extremely powerful yet pure qi was emerging out from the palm of his hand, while emitting a radiant light. The sword qi in the air took the shape of a sword and looked like it was aiming directly at Lin Feng. At that moment, all the sword qi and sword force had combined, and was starting to pressure Lin Feng's body. The energy sword thrust itself towards Lin Feng at incredible speed. Lin Feng could dodge but had to be careful, as by dodging the sword created from energy he would be open to other attacks. Duan Han was a genius sword master. He had learnt and practiced many sword skills. Lin Feng had no choice but to recognize that Duan Han was a sword master. Lin Feng didn't think that way about all the sword users he had met before, even if they had a sword spirit. However, Duan Han was different. Deadly sword. When Lin Feng saw all the combined sword energy, he grabbed his long sword and released an incredible amount of qi to block the incoming energy sword. An incredibly huge amount of sword qi started to cover the entire arena. However, it seemed like Lin Feng's sword qi was unable to compete with the sword energy which was released by Duan Han. How powerful! His pupils started to dilate. At that moment he could already feel the sword energy released by Duan Han growing closer, which suddenly made Lin Feng feel imminent danger. He could not help but groan as he was in a dangerous situation. But the most terrifying thing was the sword energy which continued to thrust at Lin Feng. Boom! Lin Feng was projected back several steps and blood started to drip from the corner of his mouth. A bright red blood was dripping down his chin. Lin Feng's robes were ragged and his body was riddled with wounds. Lu Fei, who wasn't far behind him, ran straight towards him and offered her hand to help him stand. "I'm all right," said Lin Feng indifferently while shaking his head. All the sword qi and sword force started to combine into another energy sword. Even though Lin Feng was defeated, he would still remain brave until the end. How powerful! He's not that much older than Ren Yan, but he's much stronger. That's another genius, a genius sword master. The crowd was thinking all sorts of things. A sword master was extremely powerful. Much more than expected. Do you see now? You cannot even withstand a single attack. We have nothing in common. You will forever be chasing my footprints. Duan Han was staring at Lin Feng and looked extremely cold. He then raised his hand and shouted, "Raise your bows." Ha! The loud shout spread throughout the entire atmosphere of the gorge, and then all the cavalry mounted on their Qixia armored horses raised their bows. They had filled the cliff at the top of the gorge completely. A terrifying qi filled the air above the life and death arena. I just have to speak once and everybody will fire their bows. They will kill anyone with just a single word from me. How could you even think that you can compete with me? You may lower your bows. Duan Han had told them to lower their bows, and all the cavalry instantly lowered their bows. Your strength and my strength are not even comparable. You cannot master forces to the same level as me. What makes you think that you can be intimate with Lu Fei when I cannot? Duan Han said with an ice-cold tone. Duan Han, you are a shameless asshole, shouted Lu Fei, furiously cursing at Duan Han. If you are so strong now, it is because of the clan in which you grew up, which descends from the imperial family. You don't know what it is to lack great teachers and resources. Why are you doing this to Lin Feng? Besides, Lin Feng is an expert at learning martial skills and agility techniques. Haven't you noticed that his skills have the power of highest quality Xian level skills? He has gained everything by relying on his own power. Are you not ashamed to show off the power you gained from your clan in front of Lin Feng? All you have learnt and all the power you have is because your family and because you have a high status. You have never had to rely on your talent. Do you even have any? You cannot deny, however, that I perfectly master all of these skills. You cannot deny that I am now an extremely strong cultivator. Lin Feng and I really have nothing in common, said Duan Han, disagreeing with Lu Fei. Even if that's the case, what's your problem? Don't forget that you are older than Lin Feng as well. In 2 years he will be much stronger than you. You are pathetic and shameless. Lu Fei was shouting and everyone was nodding in agreement with what she was saying. That's right. Everything that Lu Fei said to Duan Han was actually justified. Because Duan Han came from such a powerful family, and had such a high status, that didn't mean he wasn't gifted or couldn't use forces properly. However, was he more gifted than Lin Feng? Lin Feng's background wasn't as good as Duan Han's. Lin Feng could only rely on himself to gain his power. If Lin Feng switched places with Duan Han, He would probably be many times stronger than him. Besides, Lin Feng was still very young. He was 2 years younger than Duan Han. 2 years was enough for Lin Feng to exceed Duan Han even without the same resources. Lin Feng was much more talented than Duan Han. No matter what you say, strength is strength, weakness is weakness. Today he will die, said Duan Han furiously. All right, we don't need you to get involved, Fei Fei. Sooner or later, you will become a member of my family, so come and stand next to me. Duan Tianlang had said that while looking at Lu Fei. It sounded like he was convinced that Lu Fei would someday become the wife to his son. In your dreams, I, Lu Fei, will never be a member of your family, screamed Lu Fei in disgust. Humph, Lu Fei, don't say such things in front of me. That's a great offense. Don't forget that the Duan family is also a part of the imperial clan. Duan Tianlang moved his arm. Immediately after, all the cavalry on their Wuxia armored horses once again raised the bows that they had just put down. All right, that's enough for today. I am offering you a great opportunity, but you don't know how to appreciate it. Since you have decided to act this way, then, all right, that's enough for today. I am offering you a great opportunity, but you don't know how to appreciate it. Since you have decided to act this way, then. Duan Tianlang suddenly stopped speaking and then raised his hand. He waved his hand down as a signal, and then a storm of arrows began whistling through the air while releasing a strong qi. They're attacking. The whole crowd had now realized that they were in danger. After that, they saw Duan Tianlang wave his hand again and say the following words: total extermination. These 2 words resonated in everybody's mind as if the words were said by a terrifyingly evil god. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Whistling sounds filled the entire atmosphere. What seemed like an endless shower of arrows was piercing through the atmosphere above the stormy gorge. However, no arrows were aimed at the stage of the life and death arena where Duan Tianlang was standing. This was the only location which was not a target for arrows. The whole crowd was looking at the arrows flying above their heads and were terrified. Most of them had already given up all hope of escaping alive. There were so many arrows, and each of them was as swift and powerful as a meteor crashing down from the heavens. The cavalry on the Wuxia armored horses were definitely incredibly powerful. Horrible shrieks could be heard and resonated through the entire gorge. Some of the Yunhai sect's disciples had been hit by arrows in the head, shoulders, chest, and arms. Bright red blood was filling the gorge like an ocean. Only the strongest cultivators within the gorge had managed to avoid the arrows. It was already difficult to dodge the arrows, and this was also only the first wave of arrows. Nan Gongling was looking at the arrows flying above his head. He was still standing on the bleachers. Some arrows flew above his head, but he managed to disintegrate them into dust, which then continued flying past him. An immense sorrow could be seen in Nan Gongling's eyes while he was looking around at the current scene. He then closed his eyes because he couldn't stand seeing all his precious disciples being killed before his eyes. All these disciples admired him and worshipped him as the patriarch. In front of that spectacle, he felt absolutely powerless. The elders of the sect were feeling the same as they watched the bloody spectacle before them. They would have never expected that the Yunhai sect would ever go through such horrible hardships. This truly felt like a nightmare. They would never have expected the total extermination of the Yunhai sect would occur on this day. The first wave of arrows had finally come to an end. The blood from all the dead disciples created a small river of blood which was flowing through the gorge, which was drowned in silence. Lin Feng, who was standing inside the life and death arena, was calmly looking at the blood flowing through the gorge. The sunlight was shining down on his skin, yet he didn't feel any warmth at all. He just felt an endless coldness running through his veins. In the stormy gorge, some people had entered death's embrace while some others were still struggling against death, even in their last moments. Those who were about to die were crying tears of regret while staring at the heavens and screaming in pain. If this was the previous world, there were many disciples who were still very young and would have still been going to school. They had parents, brothers, and sisters. Their future was still filled with endless possibilities. They had come to the Yunhai sect to become stronger and to receive an education in cultivation. They had come hoping to improve their lives and allow their families to have better living conditions. But after Duan Tianlang's voice resonated in the atmosphere, their future of endless possibilities had turned to dust. Death was already here for them and their bodies were already floating within a sea of blood. Lin Feng's heart had never felt so cold. He felt so cold that he had the feeling his heart was losing blood through stab wounds. These young disciples were just like him, made of blood and flesh. They still had a long life before them. Many of these young disciples had done nothing wrong and were just trying to improve their family's well-being. Lin Feng took a long and deep breath of the desolation before him. He then looked closely at a thicker artery of that bright red river of blood with his eyes wide open, and had the feeling that he was drowning in an endless pit of sorrow. The strong cultivators could steal the future which belonged to the weaker people of this world. They could slaughter them and exterminate them as they would do to bugs. That was the cruel and sad reality of this world. Those who were not powerful were like insects to be crushed by those stronger cultivators. Fire! Duan Tianlang's voice spread throughout the atmosphere again, making the stones of the gorge tremble. Sharp and deadly arrows started piercing through the air again like evil spirits falling from the sky. Horrible shrieks spread throughout the atmosphere. There was nothing to be done though. The ordinary disciples who were particularly vulnerable could only stare on in despair. A horrible shout filled with pain and agony filled the gorge. Lu Fei was kneeling down on the ground looking at the corpses while grabbing her beautiful long hair with such power that it ripped some from her head. Her delicate cheeks no longer had a rosy complexion and she stared on lifelessly. The ones killing these people were the cavalry on the Qixia armored horses, her father's own army. Those who were being killed were the Yunhai sect's disciples. They were her fellow disciples, but also her father's fellow disciples. She, like many others, could only stand there and watch the slaughter with broken hearts while unable to prevent the massacre from happening. Duan Han, bring her over here, Duan Tianlang had said with a cold tone while looking at Lu Fei. Duan Han slightly nodded and moved towards Lu Fei. But at that moment, an extremely quick and agile silhouette quickly landed in front of Lu Fei. It was Lin Feng. Get lost. If you want to die, don't worry, it's only a matter of time, Duan Han said while looking expressionless. But Lin Feng seemed like he hadn't heard Duan Han's words. He was only staring at him with his pitch-black eyes. He was looking at Duan Han with a cold and calm expression. How ruthless would someone need to be to remain calm while thousands of people had been and were being sulfured? Huh. Duan Han frowned and looked at Lin Feng's eyes, which looked incredibly evil. These cold and evil eyes suddenly made Duan Han shiver. Since you want to die right now, I will finish you off, Duan Han shouted while his face twisted in anger. He was furious because he had shivered from fear while in front of Lin Feng, and Duan Han felt humiliated. Even though he didn't deny the fact that Lin Feng was a genius with incredible talent, he still thought that Lin Feng had no right to humiliate him because he was just a nobody from no-name clan. The sight of Lin Feng and Lu Fei caring for each other made him especially furious. He wanted Lin Feng to kneel down at his feet. He wanted to show Lu Fei that Lin Feng was a weakling and a nobody. He could never compare with the majestic blood which ran through his veins. Duan Han's sword started to glow. He had a sword spirit and had been learning sword skills since he was a child. Swords had almost no secrets from him. His sword skills were so advanced that he didn't even need a sword in order to use his sword skills. In his hands, almost anything could become a sword. An extremely powerful sword qi emerged from the palm of his hand and created a strong wind moving towards Lin Feng. Duan Han wasn't using any specific skill. He wanted to show Lu Fei that he was extremely powerful and could kill Lin Feng with a simple wave of his palm. Pierce. Lin Feng's body moved gracefully towards the attack. He grabbed his sword and pierced towards Duan Han's sword qi, aiming exactly at its weakest point. Duan Han immediately understood. He perfectly understood that the qi that he was using had taken form. It was very clear to him which part of it was stronger and which part was weaker. VSSA. Duan Han's sword qi vanished in an instant. Lin Feng's sword, which was filled with the deadly qi, was still moving towards Duan Han at an incredible speed. Duan Han was surprised but reacted quickly. He raised his right hand and released a strong qi which shot towards Lin Feng's sword with a whistling sound. However, this qi still wasn't enough to stop the attack. The sword which was rushing toward him did not even slightly slow down. The sword was still filled with a deadly qi which smelt like death and destruction. Duan Han frowned. He was a cultivator of the fourth Ling qi layer. He was much stronger than Lin Feng, but why did Lin Feng's sword give him such a bad premonition? Duan Han raised both his hands to stop the extremely powerful deadly qi, but it didn't work. His body was projected backwards by Lin Feng's powerful attack. Die! Lin Feng said with a calm and ruthless tone. The qi from his long sword was giving the feeling that death itself was contained within the sword. His sword force was also emerging endlessly from his long sword. The qi and force emerging out of Lin Feng's sword looked so natural, as if it was absorbed directly from the power of heaven and earth. How is that possible? Duan Han stared onwards and could not believe his eyes. The sword force, that sword, everything had merged into perfect harmony. Even with his years of training, he was unable to perform such a feat. That sword was as fast as lightning and its power was incredible. Duan Han had absolutely no time to counter an attack with such power. He had no choice but to dodge. He's probably using his sword of nirvana. Being able to keep up that power even during a second attack is really incredible. Lin Feng is a genius when it comes to learning skills. His power is really terrifying. He will definitely not die today. Protector Bei's attention had been on Lin Feng from the beginning. Everybody in the Yunhai sect could die except for Lin Feng. Protector Bei wasn't being cruel or merciless when thinking that everybody could die except for Lin Feng. He just thought that if only one person survived, it had to be Lin Feng because he was the only hope of a future that the sect had. Protector Bei even thought that if he had to die, it wouldn't be a problem as long as Lin Feng stayed alive. Shadow steps, Duan Han started moving at full speed. His entire body looked like a shadow while it tried to escape Lin Feng's deadly sword. He then stopped and looked at his clothes. They were torn and ragged from almost taking that previous attack. When he saw that, his face changed and he looked hideously evil. Lin Feng had surprisingly almost injured him and had managed to tear his clothes. If he had been a single step slower, then that deadly sword would have directly pierced into his chest. Duan Han could only feel extraordinary shame and humiliation. He who had broken through to the fourth Ling Qi layer had suddenly almost been injured by Lin Feng, who had only broken through to the second Ling Qi layer. Just like a moment ago, he had been humiliated by Lin Feng again. You are very lucky, but now I will have to get serious. Duan Han was trying to hide his anger and remain calm. He was, of course, not going to admit that he had almost been injured by Lin Feng because of his own arrogance. He would rather attribute it to Lin Feng's luck. You have broken through to the fourth Ling Qi layer. I have broken through to the second Ling Qi layer. You are apparently extremely strong and apparently I'm not even worth the effort of fighting. Yet I almost injured you and then you attribute it to luck. I see you must not have been serious when you just ran away with your tail between your legs. Duan Han, don't you think that you are shameless pretending to this extent? Lin Feng had a smile on the corner of his mouth. His pitch-black eyes were radiating killing intent. His words were ridiculing Duan Han. How can you be so shameless here? How can you be so shameless here? Lu Fei had moved closer to Lin Feng. She was looking at Duan Han with an icy stare. Her eyes were filled with hatred and contempt. Duan Tianlang and his son had destroyed the Yunhai sect. She would make sure that these two disgusting people were going to regret it for their entire life. When Duan Han heard that Lu Fei was insulting him, his face looked really ugly. Duan Han had always thought that Lu Fei would become his wife, and seeing his future wife insult him and protect another man had made him furious. I am shameless? That piece of trash is not even able to defeat me and I am shameless? Said Duan Han while coldly looking at Lin Feng, and then said, Fei Fei, I will show you the gigantic gap that exists between him and me. The difference is way too big. I am at the second Ling Qi layer and you are the fourth Ling Qi layer. You are obviously very strong, but bragging in front of me can definitely be described as being shameless. Said Lin Feng, who wasn't scared of Duan Han in the slightest. He then added, if you are brave enough, then try and attack me. Humph, I will just show you that I don't even need to move from where I stand to defeat you, shouted Duan Han. Duan Han was furious because of Lin Feng's sharp tongue. He stood in the same position while waiting for Lin Feng to make the first move. Lin Feng's dark eyes revealed a slightly happy expression for a second. Lin Feng suddenly closed his eyes and had a feeling of absolute peace and serenity. He felt at peace in this world made of darkness. The loudest noise would not have been able to disturb Lin Feng at that moment. In Lin Feng's mind, there was only a dark world filled with coldness and the smell of death. Lin Feng had the feeling that there was no sword qi existing in this world, and the life and death arena was absolutely calm inside this world of darkness. At that moment, a grayish-black shadow emerged out of Lin Feng's sword, slowly filling the atmosphere. It looked like the shadow of death which had come to claim the dead. Death is cold. Death is dark. Death is here. Lin Feng opened his eyes and they were filled with an indescribable darkness which made him look even more heartless than before. Lin Feng started moving and the grayish-black qi which was emerging out from his long sword started to follow him. His sword looked like it could annihilate all of the 10,000 things within creation. He then began another strike using the skill sword of Nirvana. Lonely sword. The force diffused by the sword was much weaker than before. The qi didn't make whistling sounds as it pierced through the air. The sword this time seemed lonely and silent. The sword carried the smell of death as if it was going to annihilate everything within the world to make itself the only thing remaining. A lonely sword. Duan Han's face drastically changed. It was as if he understood the danger of the sword which was in Lin Feng's hand. He was surrounded by such a terrifying energy which smelt like death and battle. He could not help but tremble in fear. Celestial propulsion. Duan Han used a high-quality skill of the Xian level. An extremely powerful essence appeared in front Duan Han's body, while he started to retreat. Thur. A small sound was heard. The lonely sword had the power to annihilate all things within creation. Even Duan Han's high-quality Xian level technique had vanished when it touched the energy emitted by Lin Feng's sword. Get lost. At that moment, a loud shout spread throughout the atmosphere. A dazzling sword broke the qi from the lonely sword. Lin Feng's body was projected back like a leaf in the wind, but the attack eventually reached its destination and Lin Feng coughed out several mouthfuls of blood. The one who had attacked was Duan Tianlang. His face had grown extremely cold. He looked like he was ready to murder Lin Feng on the spot. Sword masters were in perfect fusion with their swords to the extent that they could exchange energy with each other. This was called Unity Force. Unity Force enabled sword masters to move but powered by the sword force granted by their swords. It also enabled them to carry out even stronger and more powerful attacks which no longer relied on qi. Only real geniuses could learn to master their force to such an extent. They would need to be at a minimum of the Ling Qi layer to use Unity Force. However, the force was much more efficient and powerful when cultivators had broken through to the 5th or 6th Ling Qi layer before using it. Duan Han, Duan Tianlang's son, at the moment when he had broken through to the 3rd Ling Qi layer, had learned how to use Unity Forces. He was a real genius. The sword qi and sword force released when using Unity Force is not easily dispersed. Unity Force was thickly condensed with power and several times stronger than normal forces. Only sword masters who were geniuses could comprehend the power behind Unity Force before having reached the Xian Qi layer. Lin Feng, who had only broken through to the 2nd Ling Qi layer, had managed to trick Duan Han. Lin Feng had started using Unity Force a moment ago, but he couldn't control it, which is why Duan Tianlang had time to interrupt his attack. At that moment, Lin Feng had blood spilling out of the corner of his mouth, but his dark eyes were still revealing a happy expression. Father and son fighting together against a single disciple. We really do have nothing in common. I could never be that shameless. Lin Feng's words were so sharp that Duan Han had the feeling he was being stabbed through the heart. You shut the hell up, said Duan Han, extremely furious, which made him look like a demon. He hated Lin Feng from the bottom of his heart. Duan Han, what's the point in arguing with someone who is already dead? Duan Tianlang had said that in a loud yet indifferent voice and then started moving straight towards Lin Feng. Duan Tianlang, attacking junior disciples is really the worst thing a wise senior cultivator could do. You are a worthless person. Nangongling and a few elders fell from the sky and landed in the life and death arena just in front of Lin Feng. Duan Tianlang stepped forward, however, when he saw all the elders who were accompanying Nangongling, he hesitated. Suddenly, an extremely powerful qi filled with the atmosphere, and the sky looked like it was going to collapse under the pressure. We will slowly kill these old guys over time, but first we must kill Lin Feng. Duan Tianlang had said this with a neutral tone, as if he had said nothing special. He had brought along some outstanding cultivators to support him and did not fear the power of the Yunhai sect. The patriarch of the Haoyu sect, the patriarch of the Ice and Snow Village Mountain as well as the one of the Mo sect. They were all monstrously powerful cultivators in their own right. They had also brought along their elders and disciples as support. They were a much stronger fighting force than the Yunhai sect. At this time their goal was to annihilate the Yunhai sect, take everything that belonged to them and then share it equally between them. That was actually one of the reasons why Duan Tianlang had managed to convince all these patriarchs to join him and help him get outstanding disciples to send them to the holy courtyard of Shuiyu. There were many things to take from the Yunhai sect. Amazing treasures, profound skills and agility techniques, as well as these outstanding young disciples. Qixia armored cavalry troops, slaughter them all. Duan Tianlang made a wave of his hand. Immediately the cavalry on the Qixia armored horses started galloping towards the inside of the gorge. Duan Tianlang, I am the patriarch of the Yunhai sect. If you want to destroy it then you will need to fight against me. Nan Gongling started moving with extreme speed and a gigantic qi which contained elements of force shot straight towards Duan Tianlang. Why would I be scared? Said Duan Tianlang while smiling coldly, and then his body immediately rose into the air. Nan Gongling followed him into the air. High up in the air, Duan Tianlang's sword started glowing and HR tried to attack Nan Gongling with an extremely powerful sneak attack. Boom! The gigantic python fish had its wings wide open and the patriarch of the Mo sect was sitting atop it looking evil. The eyes of the beast were extremely terrifying. How evil! Protector Bei released his crane spirit, then it flew up at the speed of lightning and threw itself at the flying python fish. Everybody else was choosing an opponent and a large-scale battle began to take place. It was a huge battlefield filled with blood and power. It was like a hurricane was moving from place to place and leaving behind destruction and bodies. On the ground, in the air, no matter where it was within the stormy gorge there were battles taking place. The fighting stage of the life and death arena was shaking so much that it looked like it was going to collapse under the pressure. Lin Feng's pitch-black eyes were looking around at the huge battle. Lin Feng had the feeling that the patriarch, Protector Bei and these elders of the sect were fighting for him. Lin Feng would have never thought that these people would try to annihilate the Yunhai sect. He especially never thought that so many people would fight for him. An extremely cold feeling invaded his heart like a waterfall of ice. Lin Feng felt a sudden sense of belonging within the Yunhai sect. People were fighting for him. They were risking their lives to protect him. Nan Gongling, Protector Bei as well as other elders were very powerful. They might have the power to win this battle or scare the opponent from the fight without risking their lives. Nothing was certain, but at least there was still some hope to be found. However, they were all fighting with their life on the line because of him, a disciple of the Yunhai sect. The Yunhai sect. Lin Feng whispered the name of the sect while looking at the sunlight that was shining down on the river of blood. Lin Feng. At that moment, a voice spread throughout the atmosphere. Lin Feng turned around and was surprised. He only saw someone with a cold look who was moving towards the fighting stage. The eyes of this person looked like they were ready to murder. It was Wuxia. Filthy animal. Lin Feng saw Wuxia's cold smile getting clearer and clearer as Wuxia was approaching him. In such a horrible and desperate situation, Wuxia, who was an elder, wasn't fighting for the Yunhai sect, but was moving towards Lin Feng to settle personal grudges. In that chaotic and apocalyptic situation, Wuxia had decided he would use the opportunity to kill Lin Feng. Why would you kill me now? What's the point? Wouldn't it be better to try surviving now? Lin Feng was looking at Wuxia, who was moving towards him with a cold, murderous look. Well, do you think that if I hand you over to Duan Tianlang, he will still want to kill me? In such circumstances, I will not need to struggle to survive and can live comfortably. Wuxia had a particularly evil smile on the corner of his mouth. Lin Feng was astonished to hear such shameless words leave the mouth of an elder. It was already impossible to be more shameless and despicable than Wuxia. I really admire you. Being so incredibly shameless and on top of that being able to smile with happiness while you watch your sect be destroyed. Said Lin Feng. Why? Why not just consider winners to be great and losers to be trash? Losers in my eyes are always in the wrong. Duan Tianlang is powerful, and if he wants to annihilate the Yunhai sect, then it is useless to go against his will. Those risking their lives for the Yunhai sect right now are stupid and ignorant losers. Not only was Wuxia cruel and heartless, but he also sounded extremely arrogant. It really seemed like he had no values at all. Since it's like that, come, I will end your pitiful life. These words had come directly from Lin Feng's heart. It seemed easier said than done, but Lin Feng already looked like he was ready to kill Wuxia. Wuxia frowned and suspiciously stared at Lin Feng. A second later, Wuxia looked relaxed again, as if he was worrying for no reason. Even though Lin Feng was a genius, it was impossible for him to kill Wuxia. Such a pity. I will kill you like an insect between my two fingers. I will make you die slowly and painfully. Wuxia released his boa vine spirit, and immediately vines emerged beneath Lin Feng's feet. Wuxia was attacking Lin Feng with a surprise attack, even though they greatly differed in power. Lin Feng was suddenly wrapped up in the vines from the sudden attack. Surprisingly, Lin Feng was not attempting to resist. Wuxia hadn't noticed that Lin Feng had a smile on his face. It looks like you have already given up. Don't worry, I will kill you very slowly and use your head as a trophy, said Wuxia while looking extremely cruel. At that moment, a shadow was climbing up Wuxia's body. That shadow was intangible. It was almost invisible and did not look like something that should exist within this world. Is that so? Suddenly Wuxia stopped moving. His body was no longer under his control. He shivered from head to toe in fear. It's him. Wuxia would never forget that day when that black shadow had completely oppressed him. At that moment there was a shadow that was preventing him from moving. Lin Feng, you already knew about this, right? Lin Feng, you already knew about this, right? Wuxia had the feeling that his body was completely frozen. He was unable to move. Lin Feng, a moment before, hadn't dodged his attack, but he had allowed himself to be attacked willingly. But that shadow hadn't appeared since the last time, so how could Lin Feng have any idea that it would appear? Elder. Wuxia said that to the shadow but didn't dare try to move. He was scared because his life could end in a single moment. The sect has such degenerate elders like you remaining. This is such a disgrace. The voice came out of nowhere. Suddenly, a dark green light flashed through the air with incredible speed. No silhouette was seen, only a light as it flashed through the air. When the light vanished, the silhouette had finally appeared. This person was wearing a black cloak which seemed to hide part of his face. Suddenly, the silhouette took out a dagger which had bright red blood dripping from the tip. That blood was obviously Wuxia's. Wuxia was still standing at the same place as a moment before, and was still completely motionless. His eyes were wide open as if he couldn't believe his eyes. He still could not believe that within that split second that elder had ended all his chances of life in this world. Blood suddenly started spilling out from his throat, and his body collapsed heavily onto the ground. I would have never thought that someday I would use this dagger against an elder of the sect. How lamentable. The old man's voice sounded desolate. Protector Kong, said Lin Feng to the old man in the black cloak. So that's how it was. That shadow belonged to the old man who protected the precipice of the abyss. How did you know that I was here? Protector Kong looked at Lin Feng while nodding. When he used his shadow spirit, there was only a shadow. A moment ago, Protector Kong hadn't revealed that he had arrived, and yet Lin Feng had willingly lured Wuxia into attacking him. Perception. Lin Feng replied calmly. His spirit enabled him to sense the world. He didn't need his eyes to observe it. He could sense and perceive all things in their movements. In Lin Feng's brain, that world of darkness was actually extremely clear, as if he was the creator of the darkness. Everything that surrounded him was known to him, and appeared with total clarity. Even though Protector Kong had been using his shadow, Lin Feng had surprisingly been able to sense his presence. Lin Feng then understood that the shadow was the one that had protected him last time he had been attacked by Wuxia. Protector Kong then nodded. Lin Feng, you are the most extraordinary young man that I have ever met. You are a true genius. Leave this place and go far away. Go as far as you can, and let's hope that someday the Yunhai sect will be reborn again. Protector Kong's voice was filled with sadness. He was a protector of the Yunhai sect, and on that day, the sect which he was protecting was being exterminated. If I am alive, I will definitely bring the Yunhai sect into the future. Lin Feng solemnly nodded as a sign that he was making a promise to the old man. However, he still had to get out of that massacre alive. Duan Tianlang would never let him off. Ahak! In the sky, blood was raining down. Someone wearing dark clothes had been killed. It looked like an elder of the Yun Hai sect. Kongming, I've been waiting for you for a while. Then a silhouette fell from the sky and landed in front of Protector Kong. Protector Kong was speechless and he was shaking in anger. His facial expression suddenly drastically changed and he vanished in the blink of an eye. There was only his shadow remaining on the ground. At that moment, a silhouette in the sky was looking at the blood, and then at Moc's cadaver on the ground. That person's face was filled with hatred. Yun Hai sect, I have done so much for you and in the end, you end up killing my only son. How could you? Songlan had gone insane. He turned around and looked at Duan Tianlang and Nan Gongling who were fighting. Die, thought Songlan evilly. His silhouette then flashed through the atmosphere and landed next to Nan Gongling, and he wholeheartedly started fighting on Duan Tianlang's side against Nan Gongling. Nan Gongling didn't know that Moxia was dead, so he didn't understand what was happening. Songlan's attack projected Nan Gongling straight towards Duan Tianlang's sword. Suddenly, blood gushed out of Nan Gongling's left arm and mixed with the bright light released by the sword. Nan Gongling's left hand had been completely cut off by the sword. Song. Lan. Nan Gongling fell down onto the ground but didn't even look at his hand which had been cut off. Instead, he was staring at Songlan who had pushed him into the attack. Songlan, his friend and a great elder of the Yun Hai sect. This is my revenge, said Songlan coldly while looking at Moc's corpse lying on the ground. Nan Gongling then noticed Moc's corpse, and his own wound. Then at Protector Kong in the middle of a fight. Moxia had been killed by Protector Kong. Nan Gongling was obviously able to understand what had happened. It is good that he finally got what he deserved, Nan Gongling said while sounding indifferent. He then looked around him. He saw that many elders were in weak positions, and that the opponents still had many people who hadn't even gotten involved in the fights yet. They were just there to prevent people from escaping. All the members of the Yun Hai sect, gather around me immediately. Nan Gongling had shouted these words very loudly and suddenly, a multitude of people were coming from all sides towards the fighting stage of the life and death arena. More and more people stopped fighting against their current opponents. They left them behind and joined Nan Gongling on the highest fighting stage. Apart from Nan Gongling who had had his hand cut off, many other people were injured and covered with blood. Lin Feng was standing behind the crowd. He looked calm but his eyes were filled with sorrow in front of such a tragedy. Do you know what to do now? While blood was unceasingly spilling out of Nan Gongling's arm, he was fixedly staring at Duan Tianlang. Everybody in the crowd didn't need explanations. They all nodded as a sign that they had understood what Nan Gongling meant. Protector Bei, take him. Nan Gongling had said that to Protector Bei in a solemn tone. Protector Bei nodded solemnly. His crane spirit, amongst all the people who were present, was the strongest and the quickest of spirits. Immediately after, Protector Bei landed on Lin Feng's side. He released his spirit, spread his wings and grabbed Lin Feng. Lin Feng had finally understood what Nan Gongling meant. They wanted. Everybody, including all of the elders, were staring at Lin Feng. All sorts of expressions could be seen on their faces but a few of them revealed hope. Everybody was looking at Lin Feng with hope. Lin Feng was their only hope. Lin Feng had a big headache. He had the feeling that he had just received a mountain of pressure on his shoulders. These strong people wanted to give up their lives to make sure that Lin Feng escaped alive. They wanted to sacrifice themselves for him. All these lives to save a single life. Many of these people were strong enough that they might be able to survive if they attempted to escape alone. While there was no bond between Lin Feng and many of these people, they had all chosen to entrust the future to him. Because Lin Feng did not have strong ties to the sect, they did not know what he would do if he escaped alive, but they all still had relieved expressions as if they had done all that they could. The only one who wasn't looking at Lin Feng was Nan Gongling. He was observing the opponents. I, Lin Feng, have my own talents and my loyalty cannot be bought. How could he not have faith in the person who said these words? Nan Gongling had only thing in mind. Let Lin Feng escape while they cleared a path for him. Go! Nan Gongling shouted extremely loudly. He then immediately jumped into the air again and prepared for battle. Everybody started moving at the same time as Nan Gongling, The sect is being destroyed under my reign. Yunhai sect, please forgive me. I'm so sorry. An extremely powerful qi was released from Nan Gongling's body, and he threw himself into battle to clear a path without hesitation. This was the greatest regret of his life, that in his time the Yunhai sect had been reduced to such a sorry state. You will die. A loud shout filled the air and suddenly a glowing sword whistled in the air accompanied by multiple different attacks. Boom! Nan Gongling's body turned into nothing but ashes. The youngest patriarch in the history of the Yunhai sect had perished. Nobody seemed to feel sorry for him or was crying loudly. All the elders of the Yunhai sect were calmly looking at his dead body. They were being attacked from all sides as well as they distracted the enemies from chasing Lin Feng. This was not how things were supposed to be. Some elders were still trying to dodge the incoming attacks and to fight against the enemies of the sect. They didn't care about dying for the sect, but they were still hoping to survive long enough to kill their opponent. Die! Die, die, die! A strong wind was blowing over the arena. Each and every elder tried to survive as long as they could and fight, sparing no effort while using their full strength. The opponents were only attacking and didn't even need to defend themselves. Each and every single of these elders was falling down under the various attacks. This was the last chance that they had to show their will and determination. Lin Feng was looking at them and didn't blink even once. All these people who were fighting to the death would turn their head around and have one last look at Lin Feng before they died. Let's go. Protector Bay finally started moving at full speed like a comet moving towards the horizon. The wings of the crane were creating whirlwinds as they flapped through the air. The power of these whirlwinds was painful to Lin Feng like blades striking his skin, but at this moment his heart was in even more pain. His fellow disciples, his friends and even those elders that owed him nothing, but they still gave their lives for him. They were all going to die while he would have to live on. Where do you think you are going? A loud voice spread throughout the atmosphere. It was just as incisive as ever. A dazzling sword appeared. It was the old man which was stood next to Duan Tianlang. Piercing shadow die. A loud voice spread throughout the atmosphere but seemed to come from nowhere. Only a dark green light flashed, but that light everybody saw it. The possessor of a shadow spirit could kill without moving. He could pull out other people's souls out of their body and take their lives. How dare you! Shouted a voice extremely loudly. The shadow and the gigantic dazzling sword collided into each other. For a second it seemed like they were both attempting to swallow the other. The old man was injured and blood started to flow from his chest. At that moment, the shadow appeared while the arm and the dagger had disappeared from sight. Protector Bay hadn't even seen what had just happened and continued flying towards the horizon. You cannot leave. You cannot leave. Another voice spread throughout the air behind Lin Feng and Protector Bay. The python fish was spitting in and out a thick smoke. It suddenly opened its gigantic mouth and took a deep whistling breath which resonated in the atmosphere while releasing a strong qi. At the same time, a legendary rock spread its gigantic wings and flew towards Lin Feng and Protector Bay. The strong qi and the air currents in the atmosphere slowed Lin Feng and Protector Bay's escape. Lin Feng had the impression that his body was going to be swallowed by the beasts chasing him. If Protector Bay wasn't firmly controlling the situation, Lin Feng would have already been eaten by the python fish. The legendary rock was a Xian-level beast. It was extremely powerful. Only cultivators of the Xian Qi layer could control them. A single breath could release an incredible amount of energy, and Lin Feng, at that moment, would be unable to withstand even half of a breath. Suppress them. Tung Wushan was on the body of the legendary rock and was shouting. He took out some pitch-black chains and threw himself at Lin Feng while attempting a surprise attack. Get lost! A loud shout was heard. The pitch-black chains had been intercepted by someone, and that person was the old woman. Go! I will kill this evil animal. The old woman's voice was calm, but Protector Bay solemnly nodded. There were only two people who were strong enough to catch up with him. One of them was the old man carrying a huge sword, and the other was Ten Wushan, who was riding the legendary rock. These two people had both attempted to intercept him with their attacks. The old man had been injured by Protector Kong, so if they managed to kill the legendary rock, nobody would be able to catch up with Lin Feng. Concerning what the old woman had said, Protector Bay had doubts and suspected she wouldn't have the power to kill the rock. I still remember our agreement. Please remember to tell Lu Tsonglan, that little bastard, that I forgive him. As far as Wen Renyan and Lu Fei's wedding is concerned, let's forget about it. Lin Feng is suitable for this position. The old woman said calmly. Protector Bei laughed but didn't reply. Humph, you are not allowed to brag until you have actually killed my legendary rock. Tung Wushan said that while smiling coldly. He then made the pitch-black chain shake so much that the old woman almost lost balance. As she looked like she was about to fall, the legendary rock was ready to swallow her whole. Xian-level beasts were extremely intelligent, thus when the old woman said that she wanted to kill it, she had earned the hatred from the beast. An animal is animal. The old woman shouted extremely loudly in a cold tone. Her long hair was floating in the air. Then a viper shadow appeared behind her back. It then seemed like her entire body had transformed into a snake. Immediately after, she threw herself straight towards the open mouth of the legendary rock. That's right. She didn't resist and instead she hurled herself straight into the mouth of the legendary rock. At that moment she was inside its body. When Lin Feng saw that, he was extremely moved. Let's go. Protector Bei said indifferently. They looked behind them one last time and flew away at the speed of light. They only heard a tremendous roar fill the air from a distance away as they continued to move into the horizon. Lin Feng had already guessed what had happened to the legendary rock. As far as the tensions between Lin Feng and Wen Renyan were concerned, Lin Feng didn't hate the old woman at all for having saved Wen Renyan. He could understand her and why she had saved her only student. The old woman didn't care about losing face to save her only disciple's life. In the Yunhai sect she was a protector. She was also ready to sacrifice her life for the sect. That old woman was really ugly and had terrible judge of character but was definitely worthy of respect. At that moment, nobody was able to catch up with Protector Bei. The wings of his crane spirit were flashing through the air at the speed of light and in the blink of an eye, they had disappeared from the stormy gorge without a trace. Protector Bei and Lin Feng finally escaped from the Yunhai sect alive, but they didn't have any happy emotions from surviving the catastrophe. They knew that their lives had been saved because of all the blood that was flowing down the stormy gorge. At the precipice of the abyss there were only cliffs and precipices, nothing else. Apart from the passageway leading to these precipices, the only other possibility to access or leave the place was by flying there. At that moment, the silhouette of a crane was flying towards the precipice of Zhanggu, and was about to land by the square room filled with drums. Lin Feng recognized this place. He was surprised. Actually, he even had doubts. Protector Bei hadn't brought him far away from the Yunhai sect. Rather, he had brought him to the precipice of Zhanggu. We're going down. Protector Bei looked at the precipice of Zhanggu, and immediately after they landed there, they were surrounded by a dense fog. Do you remember this place? Asked Protector Bei to Lin Feng. Lin Feng didn't really understand why the Protector Bei was asking him that, but he nodded and said, I remember this very well. Yes, walking from passageway to passageway and precipice to precipice, you just end up here. While talking, Protector Bei tapped a stone 3 times and suddenly a stone wall started moving and a door appeared. These cliffs and precipices really constituted another world, but also offered a scenery of exceptional charm. Let's go inside, said Protector Bei while bringing Lin Feng in. Then the door closed itself, making a loud slamming noise. The place that they entered looked like a temple. It looked like an extremely temple within a palace. It was filled with an antique type of qi. In the middle of that temple, there was a painting of a dragon and a phoenix. There were a multitude of pillars as well which were supporting the walls of the ancient temple. On these pillars, there were a myriad of carvings representing different ferocious beasts. Surprisingly, Lin Feng had never seen many of these ferocious beasts. He was shocked that he did not know of the beasts on the carvings. The Yunhai sect didn't build and established itself here for its physical features. It actually established itself here because they had discovered this temple. Protector Bei's voice was resonating in the temple, and he then continued to introduce the place to Lin Feng. Extremely strong cultivators in the past must have regularly come here in the ancient times to practice cultivation. Of course, this place may have also been an ancient sect. Some of the most powerful and mysterious skills and techniques that you can find in the Xingqian Pavilion were actually brought from here. Before we found these skills and techniques, the Xingqian Pavilion didn't have that many extremely powerful skills. But because news spreads quickly and there are many people with bad intentions, this place is kept secret from everyone within the sect. Only protectors of the Yunhai sect know about this place. Even the patriarch does not know that this temple exists. Extremely strong cultivators of the ancient times came to practice here? Even the patriarch didn't know that place? Lin Feng was touched by the fact he had been told this secret. Surprisingly, only protectors of the sect were allowed to come here. Lin Feng was observing the temple with all of his attention. It was imposing, gigantic, and the qi flowing in the air was extremely powerful. The temple was filled with all sorts of treasures, skills, techniques, and weapons. Even though they were covered in dust, they were all very old and probably extremely powerful. Lin Feng, come with me. Protector Bei started walking and brought Lin Feng into the depths of the temple. A short instant later, they found themselves in front of the entrance of a small room. In the middle of that room there was a brown wood carving. There was also a bookshelf in which there were many books. Even though they were covered with dust, they were perfectly arranged and sorted, which meant that someone had tidied this place recently. We're going to take all of the skills and techniques of the Xingqiang Pavilion. They are all handwritten copies. The lowest skills and techniques are of the Xian level. The highest skills and techniques are of low-quality D-level ones. There is an incredible amount of books, but they are extremely hard to learn and many cannot be practiced. Even the protectors found them difficult to learn. Practicing them even a little bit already enables us to carry out extremely powerful attacks. You can choose an appropriate skill for yourself to learn. If Lin Feng had come to this place before, he would certainly have been overjoyed, but at that moment, he couldn't express the slightest sign of happiness. All the events that had occurred were uninterruptedly appearing in his mind. He couldn't get rid of these horrible images. Let's go and check another room. Protector Bei wasn't done showing things to Lin Feng. He then brought him to another antique room. Weapons. The floor made of stone was diffusing an extremely old yet strong qi which made Lin Feng feel shivers. These weapons all had spirits. These weapons had spirits, they were spiritual weapons. You can call them weapons, but it would be more precise to call them spiritual weapons. Protector Bei continued his explanations while sounding solemn. Weapon is a word used to describe ordinary weapons, but these weapons here have spirits. They are extremely powerful and unique. Protector Bei walked towards an ancient sword and grabbed it. He then said to Lin Feng, "Give me the sword that you're carrying on your back." Lin Feng slightly nodded and handed his long sword to Protector Bei. Protector Bei didn't use any skill or technique, but Lin Feng's long sword flew into the air towards Protector Bei and collided into the other sword. Clang! An incredibly clear and melodious sound resonated in the room. A sword then moved straight into Lin Feng's hand. That sword was extremely sharp and looked beautiful and shiny. All of these weapons are not ordinary weapons. They are all spiritual weapons. An ignorant man can quickly become a criminal, but treasuring a jade ring is also a crime. We have never let the weapons see the real world, but from today, all of them will belong to you. Belong to me? Lin Feng was astonished. Protector Bei was still there alive, but he was giving everything to Lin Feng. Indeed, everything that is here now belongs to you, stated Protector Bei solemnly while nodding. He then took a stone which was laying amongst all the Wians. It looked ordinary. This is an ancient Na stone. It is empty inside. If you put a drop of blood on the top, the space which is inside that stone will open itself for you. Protector Bei explained the things to Lin Feng while handing the stone over to him. Lin Feng used his sword to cut the tip of his finger. He then let a drop of blood fall onto the stone. His blood was slowly flowing on the stone, and then something strange happened. The Na stone diffused a bright and dazzling light. Lin Feng's blood became extremely red and slowly started spreading through the stone. At that moment, a wonderful sensation and emotion welled up in Lin Feng's heart. It was as if Lin Feng and that stone had created an indescribable and unbreakable connection. Lin Feng had the feeling that his entire consciousness had connected with the stone. Inside of that stone there was an incredibly huge space which was full of items. A strangely familiar smell invaded Lin Feng's nostrils, which suddenly made him shiver. Is it? Lin Feng's pupils were dilated and staring at Protector Bei. You are right. This is Nan Gongling's qi. When he was still alive, everything that belonged to him, everything that belonged to the sect was stored in that stone. Now you are the owner of that stone. declared Protector Bei solemnly. Then he fixedly stared at Lin Feng and said, Lin Feng, from today, you are the new patriarch of the Yunhai sect. Lin Feng, from today, you are the new patriarch of the Yunhai sect. Lin Feng, from today, you are the new patriarch of the Yunhai sect. Protector Bei was speaking in a solemn and quiet tone. Lin Feng was trembling from head to toe while staring blankly at Protector Bei. Lin Feng, even though the Yunhai sect probably has nobody left, I don't want it to let it disappear forever. That was Nan Gongling's wish as well. In the future, if you have the chance, then I hope that you can rebuild it and revive the Yunhai sect. While looking at the myriad of wrinkles present on the old man's face, Lin Feng nodded solemnly and respectfully. If I, Lin Feng, don't die, I will definitely revive the Yunhai sect. All right. Protector Bei smiled and tapped on Lin Feng's shoulder with his right hand. Lin Feng, there is something else I have to tell you. Protector Bei, please tell me. In the past, Fei Fei's father, Lu Tsonglan and Nan Gongling were the most outstanding disciples of the Yunhai sect, which gave endless hope to everybody within the sect. Before Nan Gongling became the patriarch of the Yunhai sect, there was Nan Gongling's teacher and former patriarch. Actually, he would have preferred to make Lu Tsonglan become the patriarch. He also wanted to give him his only daughter for marriage. But after that, Lu Tsonglan decided to leave the sect, abandoning everything behind him. He wanted to let Nan Gongling become the patriarch, but what Lu Tsonglan didn't know is that the patriarch's daughter had already fallen in love with him. Because she had been abandoned by Lu Tsonglan, she was feeling so desperate that she committed suicide. Because of the death of his daughter, the patriarch at the time suffered so much. One day he left the Yunhai sect and never came back. Nobody knows whether he was dead or alive. Since that moment, Nan Gongling became the patriarch of the sect. Besides, Lu Tsonglan had completely lost faith, so he couldn't come back to the Yunhai sect. As an apology, he made Fei Fei join the Yunhai sect. He wanted to apologize to the former patriarch and to his daughter, even more to the former patriarch's wife. Her beloved daughter had passed away, and her husband had disappeared without leaving trace. Therefore, the old woman had a deep and bitter hatred for Lu Tsonglan. She became Wen Renyan's teacher and dreamed of seeing her student getting married with Lu Tsonglan's daughter, Fei Fei. That is why Wen Renyan had dared to act such a way in the Yunhai sect. When Lin Feng heard all of these things, his heart was pounding. He was astonished. He wouldn't have thought that the Yunhai sect had such secrets. No wonder Wen Renyan was so arrogant and dared say that Lu Fei was his. No wonder that the old woman had seemed so eccentric. That explained everything. Lin Feng, did you hear the old woman when she told me to tell Lu Tsonglan that she forgave him? She also said that she had no objections to you getting married with Fei Fei. However, this is your private life and I'll let you arrange the things yourself. Protector Bei was speaking honestly, pouring out the content that was locked away in his heart, and then continued. Lu Tsonglan should be in Duanren City now. You can go and look for him. He is an honest man. He is afraid of fighting with Duan Tianlang though. If something happened to Lu Tsonglan, please take good care of Lu Fei. Protector Bei, there is nothing happening between Lu Fei and me, said Lin Feng while smiling wryly. The old woman had only said that Lin Feng was better suited for Lu Fei than Wen Renyan. Did that mean that he had to marry Lu Fei? What the old woman said was a suggestion. You have to go tell Lu Tsonglan that Lu Fei is still in the Yunhai sect. Duan Tianlang, considering Lu Fei's status, would never dare kill her. But if Lu Tsonglan fell from power or died, things would be different. Therefore you must take good care of Lu Fei. Besides, Lu Fei is also an outstanding young woman. You two are a perfect match. Alright, we have talked enough for now. The temple is yours. Dispose of it as you wish. Don't forget to go and find Lu Tsonglan. Protector Bei. Lin Feng's voice was firm. Protector Bei's tone of speech made Lin Feng have an ominous premonition. On that side there is an exit. It leads to the Black Wind Mountain. Please be careful. Of course you can also practice in the temple. You can wait to become a little bit stronger and then go out, said Protector Bei while scratching his ear. When he finished talking, he turned around and headed to the exit. Protector Bei, you... Lin Feng's facial expression drastically changed. He ran after Protector Bei and wanted to shout and ask him to stay. Lin Feng, I am a protector of the Yunhai sect. While the Yunhai sect still exists, then I can live. However, if it were to be destroyed, then how can I continue living without protecting it? When he finished talking, Protector Bei was already leaving. The large stone door opened, making a rumbling noise. Protector Bei didn't turn around and left Lin Feng alone within the temple. Lin Feng stared at Protector Bei's back as he left. Lin Feng had the feeling that lightning was surging in his heart. He was standing there while gazing blankly into the distance. While the stone door was closing itself, Protector Bei's silhouette was gradually vanishing. This would probably be the last time he saw Protector Bei. Lin Feng understood clearly that this temple didn't only separate him from the rest of the world. It was a spiritual separation like the yin and the yang. It was the key to eternal life. Lin Feng stood there alone at the same place for a long time while staring blankly into the distance, and then finally started moving again. He closed his eyes and took a deep sorrowful breath which resonated throughout the temple. Patriarch, Protector Bei, Protector Kong, old woman, these noble elders, they sacrificed themselves to save my life. They fearlessly handed themselves over to those despicable people to protect me. They are not here anymore. But I am still here, and I have so many things to do. Lin Feng was talking to himself. His sad expression had turned into a determined expression full of willpower. It required an extraordinary strength to change destiny. Lin Feng wanted to make these people who had given their lives for him a chance to find peace in death. He would make them proud and they would not die in vain. Hao Yu sect, Ice and Snow Mountain Village, Emosho sect, Duan clan, Han Shuetian, Tung Wushan, Duan Tianlang, Duan Han, Emo Tsanglan, Wen Ren Yan. All these names, all these treacherous people, they were deeply engraved in Lin Feng's memories. He would never forget about them. He would one day get revenge for the events which had happened today. Lin Feng turned around and walked towards the first room he had visited. In that room there was a huge bookshelf full of agility techniques and martial skills. It was divided into sections. One section was dedicated to agility techniques, and one section was dedicated to martial skills. Blade cadence, low D-level agility technique, produces pure and sharp energy to propel oneself. Lin Feng looked at an agility technique, but it didn't suit him at all. The best was to possess a blade spirit when using that agility technique. Of course, Lin Feng was too weak at the moment to use the energy required. He couldn't learn and practice such agility techniques. After getting stronger and after breaking through to the Xianqi layer, he would be able to control pure energy, which was extremely powerful. Lin Feng put the book back into the bookshelf and checked 2 martial skill books. Swift Leaves, skill of the low D level. Leaves emerge out of the palm of the user. These leaves are faintly discernible and extremely quick. It seems like they have no power, but they can actually penetrate directly into the opponent's body, causing internal damage. These leaves are extremely powerful and can go almost unnoticed. That looked like a skill suited to a female cultivator. It didn't look that strong, but if the opponent underestimated that skill, they would probably die in horrible conditions. A female could easily get close and kill her opponent without anyone seeing an attack. Besides, that attack was faintly discernible, which made it almost impossible for opponents to block it. Lin Feng put it down and looked at another skill. Deadly Cross Shadow, low D-level skill. Suitable for people whose spirits enable them to become invisible. It is divided into 3 movements: Vanishing Shadow, Dark Shadow, and Deadly Cross Shadow. This is similar to Protector Kong's skill, thought Lin Feng. His heart bounced for a second. It seemed like Protector Kong had only learned the first part of the skill, and had combined it with other skills. Besides, it was a perfect skill for his shadow spirit. It was extremely strong. Too bad that Protector Kong hadn't been able to practice until Dark Shadow Pierce, otherwise, he could have been really invisible. As far as the last part of the skill was concerned, Deadly Cross Shadow, it was indeed extremely powerful, making you almost undetectable by the enemy. My celestial spirit enables me to release a special cloaking chi, and the illusionary demon makes my opponents suffer of hallucinations. Combined with my spirit, that Deadly Cross Shadow should be perfect. Lin Feng's heart was racing. That skill had no strength requirement. A cultivator of any chi layer could learn and practice it as long as they could understand the complexity of the skill. That skill was only a tool though, a way to complement one's other skills. Bringing Deadly Cross Shadow into play could strongly enhance a person's other abilities. Lin Feng then continued looking at other skills. He didn't find any other skill which was appropriate for him. He then put all the skills on the bookshelf into the Na stone. Apart from Lin Feng, the protectors hadn't told anybody else about that place. These things should be safe in the bookshelf, but if Lin Feng had a problem, it was probably better to have them near him, especially in case of emergency. Lin Feng then went to the other room where there were the spiritual weapons. He also began putting them inside the Na stone. There were a lot of purity stones in the temple. Lin Feng also put them all in the Na stone. Purity stones contain pure qi like that of heaven and earth. Any cultivator who had at least broken through to the Ling Qi layer could use these to enhance their cultivation. It was a very valuable item. How could Lin Feng not take these precious items with him? Lin Feng walked around in that vast temple. He made a few rounds and noticed that on the pillar situated at the both ends of the temple, the ferocious beasts engraved into the stone were exactly the same. Only by looking at the drawings of the ferocious beasts, Lin Feng could feel an extremely strong and powerful qi. It was much stronger than that Xian-level python fish. But Lin Feng was more concerned with something else. There was a greenish door made from carved jade which was emanating a strong qi. Lin Feng tried to push it in vain. No matter what strength he put into it, it wouldn't move. Furthermore, there also seemed to be no hidden lever or switch to open the door. What is the secret of that door? Maybe the one who built this temple has left hints behind. Too bad that I can't open it. Lin Feng frowned. Protector Bei hadn't opened the door for him. Maybe none of the protectors of the Yunhai sect had ever opened this door before. Never mind. If I have the opportunity and I am strong enough, I will come back and try again. Lin Feng said these few words while finally giving up. In the history of the Yunhai sect, which dated back to 1,000 years, nobody had ever opened that jade door. It was obviously very hard to open, and it would be a waste of time to stay there for too long trying to open it. These days, the most important thing was to become stronger. Strong enough to protect himself and strong enough to protect those who are close to him. Lin Feng had broken through to the second Ling Qi layer, which was extremely rare for his age, but if he had to face cultivators who had cultivated for a few years longer, then he would be in a critical situation no matter their talent. He needed to become strong. There was a bed made of stone which was appropriate for the practicing of cultivation techniques. Lin Feng sat cross-legged on that bed and entered into a state of meditation. He was absorbing pure qi from the purity stone. However, he quickly opened his eyes with a perplexed look. There was a bed made of stone which was appropriate for the practicing of cultivation techniques. Lin Feng sat cross-legged on that bed and entered into a state of meditation. He was absorbing pure qi from the purity stone. However, he quickly opened his eyes with a perplexed look. On the path of cultivation, sitting and meditating wasn't enough to advance to the next qi layer. Knowledge was also necessary, as well as enlightenment on the path of cultivation. Lin Feng had the feeling that he had absorbed enough pure qi in order to break through to the third Ling Qi layer. It was enough qi at that moment to condense into the next layer, but he had yet to break through. He would break through to the next Ling Qi layer at the right moment. When the water comes, a channel is formed. It feels like a week has passed since I entered the temple. Lin Feng tried to estimate the time he had spent in the temple. He then immediately stood up and walked towards the exit. Considering Lin Feng's strength, it was impossible for him to leave the same way he had arrived. He could not fly. He had no choice but to walk through the long and narrow passageway towards Black Wind Mountain. Lin Feng was convinced that this passageway had been constructed by the previous generations of the Yunhai sect. It was impossible for the ancient cultivators who owned the temple to spend so much time digging in the rock to create such a long passageway to go to the Black Wind Mountain. Why would they need to do something so hidden? The ancestors of the Yunhai sect had created that place for the members of the sect to take refuge. They would have never thought that the Yunhai sect would never get the chance to escape from an attack, and that they would be slaughtered, leaving behind a river of blood. Lin Feng had walked for a while when he arrived at the end of the passageway. At that point, the passage was so narrow that he had to crouch down to exit. It was really extremely dark, and Lin Feng observed the sky for the first time in over a week. It was night and the full moon was brightly lighting the sky. The air was chilly and Lin Feng could sense the cold in his lungs and throat. This place was the summit of a chain of mountains. Surprisingly, this is where the passageway leads to. It's a very safe route, thought Lin Feng, filled with admiration for those who had created the passageway. This place was a part of the Black Wind Mountain, and it seemed like no humans had ever been there. This place was mainly occupied by ferocious beasts. Ferocious beasts in that part of the Black Wind Mountain were much larger than average, so even if they found the entrance of the passageway, they'd never be able to gain access because the passageway was very small and narrow. Apart from ferocious beasts, even if human beings found the entrance of the passageway, who would be willing to crawl through the dark passageway for such a long time without knowing where it led? A small rock which was hanging above of the entrance of the passageway fell down and rolled across the floor. Lin Feng sat on that rock and stared at the full moon. His eyes revealed disappointment. Lin Feng felt extremely lonely. Back in the days, he had been riding his horse from Yangzhou City towards the Yunhai sect, crossing a wide range of landscapes including lakes and rivers. Back then, he would have never thought that the Yunhai sect would give birth to lakes and rivers of blood. Lin Feng was thinking about that bloodbath and replaying the massacre over and over in his head. He had no choice but to hope for a better future. It was a cold and windy evening. Lin Feng's robes were flowing in the wind, but Lin Feng remained motionless like a statue. At that moment, the qi of heaven and earth had started fluctuating in a strange way. It suddenly started rushing towards Lin Feng, as if it was going to pierce into his bones and flesh. It was both marvelous and intriguing at the same time. Lin Feng wasn't really paying any attention to the events happening before him. He just kept looking at the moon with a look of sorrow on his face. At that moment, Lin Feng wanted to forget everything. He had really lost too much. Lin Feng had just been sitting on that rock for a little while, and something incredibly strange happened. Lin Feng was astonished. A milky pure energy was floating around his hands. It was more condensed than what Lin Feng had ever experienced before. I broke through to the third Ling Qi layer? Lin Feng was dumbfounded. He wouldn't have thought that sitting on that rock for a little while would make him break through to the next Ling Qi layer. He attributed the event to his previous meditation, but mostly to his own luck. Third Ling Qi layer. That, coupled with all the cards I now hold, if I meet Duan Han now, I should definitely be able to defeat him. When Lin Feng remembered Han Man, his eyes formed into an icy glare. Duan Han and his father all had to die for having exterminated the Yunhai sect. They had exterminated his closest friends. Who dares? Shouted Lin Feng extremely loudly. He turned around and his pupils shrank. At that moment, a silhouette appeared in front of him, but Lin Feng had the impression it was a hallucination. It was an extremely beautiful silhouette. The moon was shining upon that exquisite silhouette, allowing Lin Feng to clearly see some of her physical features. What a beauty! Lin Feng had the impression that he was dreaming. She was wearing thin white robes. Anyone who saw her would feel like protecting and hugging her, but would certainly not feel enchanted. Such perfection! Lin Feng was stupefied. Even if he felt determined and had a lot of willpower, when seeing this young girl, he could only be amazed at the beauty of the women in this world. They all looked so beautiful and delicate, much more than in the previous world. Many of them even looked like goddesses. Lu Fei was extremely beautiful and she was incredibly strong. Lin Feng had realized that beauties of this world were on another level. The girl who was standing in front of Lin Feng looked like an illusion. She actually looked like a painting. Who are you? What are you doing here? The incredibly beautiful girl opened her mouth and her voice sounded out, breaking the illusion. She wasn't an illusion, but she was so beautiful that she didn't look real. My name is Lin Feng. How did you find your way to this place? Lin Feng was too perplexed and intrigued when looking at this young girl. It was at night in a lost corner of the Black Wind Mountain, and suddenly a beautiful girl had appeared from out of nowhere. Lin Feng was utterly confused at how this had happened. Lin Feng moved towards the girl to see her better, and as expected, that girl didn't look weak. She even looked remarkably strong. Lin Feng, the girl whispered Lin Feng's name again for herself and then immediately said, I've always lived here. Suddenly, you come here and ask me what I am doing here? I also don't know how I found this place. Lin Feng shrugged and replied, but it was unlikely that she would believe him. Since it's like that, please leave, said the girl, giving a cold stare. But I don't know where I am or how to leave, said Lin Feng, smiling wryly. He only knew where the entrance of the passageway was, but he didn't know where he was at that moment and where to go from there. He didn't know where he was exactly. "Are we in the Black Wind Mountain?" asked Lin Feng. The girl stared at Lin Feng. He surprisingly didn't even whether it was the Black Wind Mountain or not. "Indeed, this is the hinterland of the Black Wind Mountain." Oh. Lin Feng was stupefied. This was the hinterland of the Black Wind Mountain? Protector Bay probably never walked here before. Lin Feng was smiling wryly. On the outskirts of the Black Wind Mountain, there were strong ferocious beasts, but inside the Black Wind Mountain, there were even more powerful ferocious beasts, and they were constantly running wild. If Lin Feng wanted to get out of here, then it wasn't going to be easy. If Protector Bay had known this before then, he probably would have never left Lin Feng alone in the temple, and would have never shown him the passageway. "You just said that you've always been living here?" Lin Feng just realized what the girl had said. He was stupefied. There were people living in the Black Wind Mountain? "Indeed. I've been living here with my mother since I was a child." The girl was nodding her head confidently. "Have you never been out of here?" asked Lin Feng. "Never." Lin Feng didn't know what to say, but he was thinking that it was better for such a beautiful and delicate woman to never venture outside. She was so beautiful that she would cause great trouble wherever she went. She looked lovely enough that she might just cause the downfall of the country. Maybe her mother is as beautiful as her, and this is why they enjoyed living in seclusion, thought Lin Feng. He then asked her, "Are there no ferocious beasts in the area?" "No, there aren't any," said the girl, shaking her delicate head. Lin Feng slightly nodded. No wonder that she could live here all of her life. If there were no ferocious beasts in that area, it wouldn't be very dangerous. "Do you want to leave here?" the girl suddenly asked Lin Feng while staring at him. Her eyes were sparkling. "Of course I want to leave tomorrow morning," said Lin Feng. "I'll help you leave here and I'll come with you." The girl opened her mouth again, but this time Lin Feng had a weird feeling. She would bring Lin Feng out of this place on her own? In the Black Wind Mountain there were many dangerous ferocious beasts. That girl didn't seem to be a weak cultivator, but she also seemed to be about as young as Lin Feng, which meant she couldn't be that strong. How could she walk through the Black Wind Mountain so easily? Lin Feng's spirit smelt like that of the imaginary demon, so that made things easier for him in the Black Wind Mountain. He could disguise himself as one of the ferocious beasts and walk freely around the mountain. "You don't trust in my strength?" asked the girl as if she could read Lin Feng's thoughts. "Of course I don't. The Black Wind Mountain is extremely dangerous. Do you think that it is easy? Besides, you said that you have never left here before." "Even though I have never left here, I know the Black Wind Mountain better than anyone. I even know where to go in order to avoid ferocious beasts. It is very easy for me, come and go as I please," the girl said while sounding indifferent, and also looked at Lin Feng expressionless. Better than anyone? She knew how to avoid ferocious beasts? Lin Feng was stupefied. He was looking suspiciously at that beautiful young girl. If she could really avoid fighting while navigating the mountain, then it would indeed be safer. "Do you agree to help me leave?" asked Lin Feng. "Yes, I have never left here, but I would like to see how it is on the outside. If I get out of the Black Wind Mountain, I will also need your help," said the young girl very honestly. "Well, your mother. She went out. I still don't know when she's coming back. No need to worry about her." Lin Feng was a bit confused, but it would be very hard alone in the Black Mountain Forest with all these extremely powerful wild beasts. Lin Feng nodded and asked, "Then when should we leave?" "Now," replied the young girl. "Alright, I want to go to the Yunhai sect." "Do you know it?" said Lin Feng as he stood up. I know everything in the Black Wind Mountain. But if I leave the Black Wind Mountain, I'll be lost." The young girl replied honestly, showing that she was extremely naive. The tops of the trees was still covered with early morning fog. Some people could already be seen walking past the gate leading into the territory of the Yunhai sect at the foot of its mountain. Most of them were going to the Yunhai sect. Very few people were walking away from the sect. The tops of the trees was still covered with early morning fog. Some people could already be seen walking past the gate leading into the territory of the Yunhai sect at the foot of its mountain. Most of them were going to the Yunhai sect. Very few people were walking away from the sect. At that moment, A young man and a young woman were walking towards the Yunhai sect. They were looking at the mountain where the Yunhai sect was and they both smiled. Girl, this is the Yunhai sect. Duan Tianlang really is an incredibly powerful man. He completely destroyed the Yunhai sect within one day. That's why everybody admires him in the Shuiyu country. Nobody will ever dare provoke him or his family in the future. Besides, I heard that he has an enemy in Duanren City. His enemy has a divine arrow spirit. When he heard what happened to the Yunhai sect, he started coughing blood. Seems like he is seriously ill. When the young man wearing luxurious clothes told the young and beautiful girl these things, they both laughed wholeheartedly. Besides, now that the Yunhai sect has disappeared, our Qingyi sect has expanded faster. Nobody in the surrounding area will dare to attack us. Indeed, if the big sects of the country don't come attack us, this entire area is ours. The young girl laughed and said, every day is different. The Yunhai sect used to be extremely powerful, and now it is nothing but dust. Over time everything would eventually fall. The sect became so strong that many people are now frightened of you. Core disciples could maybe compete with you, but elite disciples are worthless. Besides, you're only 17 years old and you're already so powerful. You're a genius. Your future is filled with endless opportunities. Haha, our Qingyi sect is much stronger now. Can't be compared with the Yunhai sect of the past. We have so many geniuses. They only had a few good skills and techniques, that's all. The Yunhai sect was a bunch of crappy cultivators. If we keep improving our stock of skills and techniques, we'll become much stronger than they ever were. When the young man wearing the luxurious clothes heard the young girl praise him, he felt extremely proud of himself and laughed arrogantly. Is that so? At that moment, a voice came from behind. The young girl and boy turned around and saw two people. But the young boy and girl didn't even look at one of them. They directly stared at the young girl wearing white robes. They were fascinated by her beauty. They had the impression that nothing else existed in the world other than her beauty. They could only see that beautiful girl wearing white robes. She made all the material attractions of that world utterly unimportant. One only wanted to look at her forever. She didn't look like any other person in the world. The boy wearing the luxurious clothes and his fellow disciple were staring at the beautiful girl, and had the feeling they were looking at a spirit. In the world, there were surprisingly people who could be that beautiful. The girl who was standing next to Lin Feng, when she noticed that these people were staring at her, couldn't help but smile wryly and shake her head. The girl had done exactly as she had promised Lin Feng. They had left the Black Wind Mountain, and what surprised Lin Feng the most is that they really had encountered no ferocious beast at all. They had managed to avoid fighting altogether. Lin Feng had started to think that the Black Wind Mountain wasn't actually as terrifying as the rumors described. There were certain paths that were incredibly safe, it was just that very few people knew of these paths. Of course, the Yunhai sect is a crappy sect. Otherwise, how could they have been annihilated so easily? Said the arrogant young man. The girl who was with the young man couldn't help but dully stare at the other girl. She didn't feel at ease because that other girl was much more beautiful than her. She had a lot of self-confidence when it came to her appearance and believed that she was extremely beautiful, but at that moment, she had the feeling that she didn't exist when standing next to that other beautiful girl. That girl was infinitely more beautiful than her. Since the Yunhai sect is a crappy sect, then why are the disciples of the Qingyi sect so afraid of going near the Yunhai sect disciples? Why do you all keep a distance of a few hundred meters from the sect even now? Why do you all look at the Yunhai sect's disciples with such reverence and respect? Lin Feng said that while smiling coldly. The Qingyi sect was an extremely small sect. They suddenly dared criticize the Yunhai sect because it had been annihilated. It seemed like they had forgotten that they used to bow down before the Yunhai sect's disciples. They were really a bunch of shameless people. That's because there are rumors which say that the Yunhai sect has a great multitude of great skills and techniques, that's all. I am happy that they are all dead. Besides, we are proud of our sect. We've never bowed in front of Yunhai sect's disciples. They're just a bunch of trash. That young arrogant disciple suddenly regained his composure and stopped staring at the girl. His eyes suddenly looked incredibly evil. Lin Feng was accompanied by an extremely beautiful girl who looked like a goddess. How was it possible not to be jealous of him? Such a beautiful girl should be given to the patriarch of the small Qingyi sect as a wife. Suddenly, The young arrogant disciple paused and started looking at Lin Feng with eyes filled with killing intent. Huh. Lin Feng frowned. His heart felt cold. That young man was suddenly looking at Lin Feng as if he wanted to kill him. The weak are the prey of the strong. The law of the jungle was the law of this world. If someone wanted to kill someone else, he would have no compassion and do it without hesitation. If I understand you properly, the Qingyi sect's disciples are much stronger than those of the Yunhai sect. Is that right? Asked Lin Feng coldly. Definitely. How could the trash of the Yunhai sect compare themselves with the great disciples of the Qingyi sect? The young man becoming more and more aggressive. He wanted to make the beautiful girl accompanying Lin Feng impressed by his confidence and strength. I challenged an elite disciple of the Yunhai sect one day and I lost. You seem to be even stronger though considering what you are saying. Shall we have a look? Lin Feng had a naive smile on the corner of his mouth making him look harmless and weak. Elite disciples of the Yunhai sect are so crappy. They can't even be compared with me. But since you are curious, I will show you what a strong cultivator is and how weak you are in comparison. The young man wouldn't have thought that Lin Feng would take the initiative to challenge him. He couldn't help but be overjoyed. Lin Feng was going to die in such a pitiful way. Besides, what is a piece of trash like you doing with such an amazingly beautiful girl? When you die, she will stay with me and I will take care of her. While saying these words, the young man in luxurious clothes took out a long sword and waved it through the air. He released his sword spirit and started moving towards Lin Feng looking extremely overconfident. Second Ling Qi layer. And you think you are going to kill me? That's surprising, said Lin Feng on a cold and indifferent tone. Lin Feng raised his right hand and an extremely powerful and strong sword qi suddenly emerged from his palm and invaded the atmosphere. The young man almost immediately collapsed when he was hit by the pressure. His face turned deathly pale with fright. The fact that you use a sword is a humiliation to all swords, Lin Feng said in a cold tone. The young man was already frozen by the pressure of the qi which Lin Feng released. A thin mark of blood appeared on his throat and with his eyes looking immensely frightened, he collapsed heavily onto the ground. The girl who was accompanying him also looked terrified. How had her fellow disciple been killed? How strong? How powerful? There was a gigantic gap between Lin Feng and her fellow disciple. When the girl saw that Lin Feng was staring at her, she could not help but start shaking with fear. I don't even need to use a single skill to kill trash from the Qingyi sect. Lin Feng's cold expression made him look evil, like a ferocious beast. Tell me your purpose for coming to the Yunhai sect. The Yunhai sect was completely annihilated. We came here to test our luck and see if we could find a few good skills and techniques. We are not the only ones, many other people want to come here for the same purpose. The young man hadn't died yet and hastily replied to Lin Feng. What about those who exterminated the Yunhai sect? Haven't they stolen everything already? Those who exterminated the Yunhai sect stayed here for 3 days after the battle. They stole almost everything, but maybe they didn't care about some skills and techniques which might prove very useful to us. Besides, the boy who had just been defeated by Lin Feng looked ashamed. He was being humiliated. Besides what? Besides, in the stormy gorge there are many corpses. Maybe they were carrying things which we could take note that they have died. Lin Feng was shaking in anger from head to toe. These animals wanted to violate the dead bodies of his fellow disciples and elders. An extremely strong and sharp sword qi invaded the atmosphere. The young man suddenly looked deathly pale again. That sword qi was so powerful. How strong was Lin Feng? Cripple your own cultivation and then piss off. Lin Feng sounded extremely cold-blooded. He was initially thinking of letting these people off, but when he heard that they wanted to steal things from the dead of the Yunhai sect, he didn't feel like being merciful anymore. These two disciples were shaking in terror. I will let you take 3 breaths from now. If you don't cripple your own cultivation, you will not breathe a fourth. Lin Feng had said he would kill them with a commanding tone. If I cripple my own cultivation, isn't it like dying? Alright, I'll finish you off now then. Lin Feng released an extremely strong sword qi which oppressed them so much that they could feel the pressure was ready to crush them. The 2 young disciples were stunned. Alright, I'll cripple my own cultivation, said the 2 young people while gnashing their teeth. They raised their hand and stabbed their dantian. They became so weak that they could not even stand, they fell helplessly onto the ground. Mengqing, let's go. Lin Feng said that to the girl who was accompanying him. Lin Feng had helped her find a name because she had told him she didn't have one. That was the only name that had come into Lin Feng's mind because Meng meant dream and Qing meant lover, and any man would have dreamt of having that girl as a lover. That was the only name which Lin Feng could come up with that would match her. Of course, the girl didn't know why Lin Feng had chosen that name for her. Actually, the outside world was completely unknown to her. Why don't you kill them? Mengqing suddenly asked Lin Feng that question, which surprised Lin Feng. He was blankly staring at her. When I look at their eyes, I feel like vomiting. Mengqing had replied to her own question. Her face revealed that she wasn't used to speaking with other people. When you look into my eyes, what do you feel? I will just show you. Lin Feng was stupefied. Mengqing's expression seemed like she suddenly had a great idea and she ran forward. Mengqing didn't really understand Lin Feng's feelings, but Lin Feng found her to be cute and charming. Unknown warmth filled his heart. Lin Feng was observing Mengqing. He was in admiration of her beauty. She looked so delicate and so cute. There was absolutely nothing detestable about her. Her thoughts were also pure and innocent. Lin Feng found it easy to get close to her. Life and Death Arena, Stormy Gorge, Yunhai Sect. Life and Death Arena, Stormy Gorge, Yunhai Sect. A bright red river of blood was flowing through the Stormy Gorge. Even though 7 days had passed, the river of blood was still flowing. There was a legion of corpses lying on the ground. The corpses hadn't started decomposing yet due to the cold temperature. The strangest thing was that many people were walking around the corpses and didn't look disgusted by all the blood. They did not seem disturbed by the scene before them, and in the contrary looked overjoyed. Each of these people had eyes filled with greed. The Yunhai sect deserved the title of a great sect. Even if these corpses only belong to disciples of the sect, they still have a great deal of items on them. A male cultivator was kneeling down next to a corpse and took a high-quality yellow-level skill from it. He then looked around him carefully, as if he was scared to be noticed by someone before he picked it up. He wasn't the only one. There was a multitude of other people just like him stealing things from the corpses within the gorge. They were all disciples of the smaller sections. When they heard that the Yunhai sect had been completely annihilated, they had rushed here to see if they would be lucky and could find some treasures hidden on the corpses. At that moment, there were 2 silhouettes stood at the top of the Stormy Gorge and were about to throw themselves into the gorge. One of them looked fascinatingly beautiful. The other was wearing a mask which had a bronze look. This mask had the capacity to increase qi. These 2 people were obviously Lin Feng and Mengqing. Lin Feng was too famous. All the great sects of the country were looking to kill him. He obviously had to be careful. Therefore, he had taken that mask from inside the temple. When she saw all the blood and smelt the putrid odor released by the corpses, Mengqing started feeling dizzy. She felt like vomiting when she saw the scene. "Why did we come here?" asked Mengqing, looking at Lin Feng, but she noticed that Lin Feng was absolutely motionless. An extremely cold aura was surrounding his body. These animals, not even letting the dead rest in peace. Lin Feng saw someone who was searching a dead body, and when he finished, he kicked it, which made the body roll away. Lin Feng was indescribably disgusted at the actions of these cultivators. When she saw Lin Feng's change in aura, Mengqing stopped talking. She didn't want to disturb Lin Feng. Lin Feng spread his arms looking like a bird spreading its wings and jumped down into the gorge. Down in the Stormy Gorge, the cultivators who were looting the dead bodies of the Yunhai sect members could feel a bad premonition. Something was about to happen. They all started to look around and then looked at Lin Feng, who was jumping down into the gorge. "Here comes somebody again." Everybody then stopped looking at Lin Feng and continued what they were doing. "Help yourself, but let's not bother each other." The cultivator who had just kicked one of the corpses away said to Lin Feng, who had just landed next to him. His manner of speech was indifferent. Nobody replied. An incredibly powerful sword qi emanated from Lin Feng's body, which stupefied the cultivator who had just spoke to Lin Feng. He started to shake from head to toe with fear. "What are you doing? There are many people here. Could it be that you refused to share the items with anyone else?" When that person sensed the qi released by Lin Feng, he shouted that really loud, trying to draw the attention of everyone in the area. Obviously, when the crowd heard that somebody had arrived and wanted all the items for himself, they all turned around and stared at Lin Feng with angry expressions. But they only saw the glow from a sword. It was a bright and resplendent light, but it looked deadly. That glow appeared and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Then the cultivator who had spoken loudly was immediately beheaded by Lin Feng. Lin Feng hadn't pronounced a single word. When everybody saw that, their eyes began to fill with indignation. Because he was an extremely powerful cultivator, that guy wanted to take all the treasures here for himself. Your Excellency, everybody has come here with the same purpose. There is no need to be cruel and merciless, otherwise, it would make a powerful man such as yourself look rude rather than your usual elegant self. A cultivator who wasn't far from Lin Feng had said with a cold tone. Lin Feng turned around. Lin Feng's eyes, hidden inside the mask, were extremely evil to behold. He didn't feel like showing mercy to anyone any longer. Lin Feng's silhouette vanished in the blink of an eye and appeared as quickly in front of the man who had just spoke to him. He then activated his deadly sword. Cruel, merciless, rude. This despicable cultivator was stealing various treasures from dead bodies, and suddenly talked about cruelty, mercy and rudeness? Lin Feng's sword started to glow again. The other man's face turned deathly pale. He was terrified when he saw the display of such power. Surprisingly, you are the type of person to enjoy spending time with the corpses here, so I will help you become one of them. This was the first time that Lin Feng had spoken during the whole event. His voice was filled with cold and merciless killing intent. His mask hid his face, which made people even more scared of him. Lin Feng made one step, and with a single strike he sent another head toppling to the ground. It was clear that Lin Feng was not playing around. However, it seemed like he was killing these fellow cultivators without any reason. What does he think he is doing? Could it be that he wants to kill everybody within the Stormy Gorge? When the crowd saw that another person had just died, they were all terrified. "Stop! What are you?" said a cultivator who saw Lin Feng walk past him. "I am the one that will take your soul." Lin Feng's sword started to glow again, and as his final word was heard, a dazzling light filled the air. The cultivator stared in shock as another headless body hit the floor. All the people who were in the gorge looting from the corpses suddenly stopped and started staring at the strange cultivator wearing the bronze mask. Each time he took a step, another cultivator's head would be separated from their body. At that moment, Lin Feng had already killed more than a dozen of the grave robbers already. They didn't even know what they had done to make Lin Feng so angry. "This does not look good. We have to find a way to stop him. Otherwise, he'll end up killing us as well." Some of the cultivators had understood that the situation was getting more dangerous. When that person finished talking, those surrounding him were all nodding in agreement. "Let's fight him together as a group. We shouldn't give him a single opportunity to attack." The whole crowd started moving towards Lin Feng as a group, and were getting ready to attack him. His sword was too dreadful. It seemed like Lin Feng would behead anyone he encountered on his way. Lin Feng was still moving from place to place and beheading people when he noticed the crowd moving towards him. These people sensed the qi emanating from Lin Feng's body, and it was growing stronger and stronger. "Don't be afraid of him. He cannot deal with this many of us. Even if he is quite strong, there is no way he can defeat this many people at once." The closer they got, the better they could sense Lin Feng's qi. Many cultivators had tried to reassure the others, although it looked like these words were set to reassure themselves before the others. Lin Feng slowly started walking towards the approaching group. The sword qi was growing stronger and stronger, which gradually destroyed the confidence of the cultivators in the crowd. "I don't want any of the treasures here." Finally, one of the cultivators who was in the middle of the crowd gave up because he could sense the strong qi which Lin Feng was emitting. He then turned around and tried to escape. He had the feeling that even this many people couldn't defeat Lin Feng. Deadly sword. Lin Feng took a few steps forward and brandished his long sword. At that moment, a deadly sword qi invaded the atmosphere and created a hurricane-like wind, annihilating everything in its way. PFFF. 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 The people in the crowd were breathing heavily. The nearer they were getting to Lin Feng, the more scared they were becoming. They had almost stopped moving and were looking at Lin Feng in terror. At this moment, every single cultivator within the group looked down at their chest and saw a small hole which had been pierced. "Why? Each and every single one of them started to collapse on the ground one after the other. Even while dying, they still didn't understand what was going on. Lin Feng was extremely strong. Why was he attacking them? Because you all deserve death. Lin Feng was holding his sword and turned around and looked at the horizon. There was nobody left. The last remaining grave robbers were running away. Lin Feng had become extremely strong. A moment before, whether it had been a dozen or 100 cultivators, nobody would have been able to avoid his sword. The only solution would have been to run far away. What cruel behavior! Suddenly on the top of the stormy gorge, a loud voice could be heard. 3 cultivators were jumping down into the gorge. "Who are you?" asked the one who seemed to be the leader of the group of 3. He was a handsome young man who looked arrogant. Chen Xing was an elite disciple, but his name wasn't carved into the ranking list. He had been very scared of being killed by Duan Tianlang. Fortunately, when Ren Yan had been there to protect him, after having been tested by Duan Tianlang, he had been recognized as a talented cultivator, and he had been assigned to guard the Yunhai sect. When Ren Yan was extremely strong and Duan Tianlang attached great importance to him, Duan Tianlang had thus sent Ren Yan to the imperial city to join the holy courtyard of Shuiyu. At that moment, when Ren Yan was in the imperial city and everybody respected him, many had started to worship him. When Ren Yan left the holy courtyard of Shuiyu, he would become a very important person within the country. Chen Xing didn't dare provoke Ren Yan and wanted to gain his favor. When Ren Yan was extremely strong, he was a genius. Since Duan Tianlang had also started taking care of him, Ren Yan's destiny could only be extraordinary. Well, Lin Feng's power is even scarier than that of Ren Yan. If he had agreed to leave with Duan Tianlang, I probably wouldn't even be alive now. When thinking about Ren Yan, Chen Xing remembered Lin Feng and how scary he was. Even when Lin Feng spoke, it was terrifying. When Lin Feng saw Chen Xing, a light flashed through his eyes under the mask. His eyes looked even more ruthless and evil than before. How shameless! Chen Xing had betrayed the Yunhai sect and was acting arrogantly again. He was again treating others like they were beneath him, and had obviously not learned his lesson. How quickly he returned to his old ways. Since the holy courtyard has been created, Duan Tianlang is extremely busy, and has no time to come here and take care of everything. I am here to handle things on his behalf. Everything here belongs to me. If you want to take things from these corpses, do as you please, but don't make trouble, otherwise, I will kill you like a worthless dog. Chen Xing was shouting loudly at Lin Feng. His voice was resonating throughout entire gorge. He was still using the same arrogant tone he had before when he spoke to Lin Feng. His voice carried a clear killing intent. Chen Xing thought that he was stronger than anyone from the smaller sects who would come here to loot. He thought that everyone was beneath him and even dared to look down on Lin Feng. When Lin Feng heard what Chen Xing had said, he was even more furious. Before, he was a disciple of the Yunhai sect and was respected by everyone. These days he despised the Yunhai sect. Because he was only interested in saving his neck, he had betrayed the Yunhai sect. So he had gone and sought refuge with Duan Tianlang, and to make things worse he let anyone violate the bodies of his former fellow disciples. Chen Xing was a beast, an animal. He did not deserve to live. Duan Tianlang is not worried about letting a piece of trash like you manage the Yunhai sect? When Chen Xing heard the evil and cold voice that came from behind the mask, he was stupefied. He stared at Lin Feng and asked, "Who are you calling a piece of trash?" Chen Xing, you used to be the best of all the ordinary disciples. However, you betrayed the Yunhai sect, and allowed others to humiliate and violate the bodies of your former sect member. What gives you the right to look so proud and arrogant? Lin Feng had spoken with an ice-cold tone which made Chen Xing shrink back. He was fixedly staring at Lin Feng. Who are you? Because of the bronze mask, Lin Feng's voice sounded a little different. Lin Feng's body gestures were a bit different as well. Therefore, Chen Xing was unable to recognize Lin Feng, even though he was standing before him. You betrayed the Yunhai sect and now you're trying to act like a little boss here. Do you even have a sense of shame? Lin Feng questioned him yet again. His sword started to glow while releasing a strong qi which created a whirlwind. When that qi reached Chen Xing's body, he started shaking violently. His pupils shrank and he was breathing heavily and very quickly. Lin Feng. That's Lin Feng, and he surprisingly still dares to come back to the Yunhai sect. Chen Xing was stupefied. Almost all the elders in Nangongling had died in the battle in order to save Lin Feng's life. Chen Xing would have never thought that Lin Feng would dare to come back. Duan Tianlang was looking for Lin Feng everywhere. If he found him, he would make him die in the most horrible conditions. But because everybody thought that Lin Feng would never dare come back to the Yunhai sect, Duan Tianlang hadn't bothered staying there. He had just asked Chen Xing and 2 other cultivators of the first Ling Qi layer to stay there and guard the territory of the Yunhai sect. These days, all the strongest cultivators had gone to the imperial city to join the holy courtyard of Shuiyu. Duan Tianlang was excited by that major event. Lin Feng was strong enough to walk freely within the territory of the Yunhai sect. A horrifyingly strong qi crashed onto Chen Xing's body. His back was soaked with cold sweat. It seems that you want to know who I am. When Lin Feng saw Chen Xing's reaction, he laughed evilly. It seemed like he was becoming more and more evil. The 2 people standing next to Chen Xing were oppressed by Lin Feng's sword qi as well, but were not brave enough to retaliate in any way. Let me off. I do not have the power to do anything. Chen Xing was begging Lin Feng. He was terrified by the idea that he would die here after escaping the massacre. You can't do anything? But you did manage to betray the Yunhai sect. You also managed to let the smaller sects come to humiliate and disrespect the corpses of your former sect. You had the power to stop them, but you didn't. How can I tolerate such disgrace? Lin Feng took a step forward while his sword started glowing with a magnificent sword force. I don't want to. Chen Xing's weak voice spread in the atmosphere. Suddenly Lin Feng's sword disappeared from sight and 3 different trails of blood gushed up in the air. Nobody had been able to resist to Lin Feng's sword. Sigh. When Lin Feng looked at the 3 corpses, he exhaled a deep breath. All of those who had come to steal items and treasures from the corpses of the sect had left or were among the corpses. Only Lin Feng was left alive while surrounded by the endless corpses. Lin Feng looked around at all the corpses of his former sect members. He was looking at these corpses lying on the ground with eyes filled with sorrow. Some of them had had their heads split in 2. Some had been attacked multiple times in the back as they retreated. The more Lin Feng looked, the more his determination increased. Lin Feng had decided to take the risk to come to the Yunhai sect to see these corpses for one last time, and to see the setting sun refracting on that river of blood. He never wanted to forget that the blood was flowing because of hatred, jealousy, and other evil intentions. He wanted to remember that the weak were bullied and killed and that the strong ruled in the world. Lin Feng was furious and anger welled up within his heart. Lin Feng definitely wanted to avenge all the deaths of his former sect members. He would never forget that these people had sacrificed themselves to save his life. He was bearing the weight of too many people on his shoulders. All these dead people had put endless faith in Lin Feng. Vroom vroom. Vroom vroom vroom. At that moment the ground started to shake. It was even shaking more and more intensely. The sound of the shaking ground was also getting louder and louder. Wuxia armored cavalry. Lin Feng's pupils shrank. Without hesitating, he quickly moved towards the edge of the gorge. He could hear the sound of the incoming heavy cavalry. Moonlight feather agility. Lin Feng stabbed his sword into the cliff in order to propel himself to the top faster. In the space of a few deep breaths he reached the top. Let's go quickly. When Lin Feng sensed the ground shake even more, he was stunned. These Wuxia armored horses were so quick. It seemed like they needed only one breath to gallop over a dozen meters. Lin Feng couldn't afford to think too much. He grabbed Meng Qing's little hand and left at full speed. When she felt Lin Feng's hand holding her hand, she had a strange sensation, but considering Lin Feng was anxious and in a hurry, she let him take her hand. Lin Feng had reacted quickly. However, there was no way to escape. At that moment, Wuxia armored horses were arriving at full speed. Lin Feng stopped in his tracks. The cavalry on the Wuxia armored horses were also wearing armor which looked imposing. When Lin Feng saw the Wuxia armored horses move nearer, he held Meng Qing's little hand even tighter. She also held Lin Feng's hand tighter. But Lin Feng didn't pay attention to that, he didn't even notice it. What troubled him the most is that he hadn't expected the Wuxia armored horses to come to the Yunhai sect, and especially at full speed like this. Could it be that they know that I have returned? Thought Lin Feng. The Wuxia armored horses were moving closer and closer. They hadn't stopped galloping at full speed. How handsome! When Lin Feng looked at one of the riders, he couldn't help but be amazed. It was a middle-aged man. He looked handsome and had the most dashing eyebrows. However, he looked extremely sad, like something sorrowful was haunting his heart. He was wearing a beautiful armor plate which looked quite spectacular. His gray hair was floating in the wind. He looked slightly strange though. The Wuxia armored horses galloped past Lin Feng and surprisingly didn't even look at him. Lin Feng couldn't help but be a bit scared. Maybe he was wrong after all and they were not here for him. They possibly didn't know that he was Lin Feng. When he thought about it, Lin Feng relaxed a little. When he turned around and saw the Wuxia armored horse neigh, and then jump straight down from the top of the gorge. That looked extremely dangerous. Amazing. Lin Feng was impressed by the Wuxia horse's power. He then turned around and went back to the edge of the gorge and looked down at the scene. At that moment, Lin Feng saw the man with the gray hair stand on the highest fighting stage of the life and death arena. He looked like a statue. He was calmly looking at all the corpses. His gray hair was still floating in the wind. He looked lonely and sad. Crash. Lin Feng was stupefied. The gray-haired man suddenly kneeled down on the fighting stage of the life and death arena, and while kneeling down, his knees had made a loud crashing sound when they slammed into the arena floor. General! A loud voice had interrupting him. The voice was spreading through the air and making the atmosphere shake. Immediately after, the other cavalry all got off their Wuxia armored horses and stared at their general. Some of them kneeled down. He looked like he was injured and his eyes revealed an immense sadness. Lin Feng's heart was pounding. Lin Feng found it amazing that the other cavalry seemed to care about their general so much. Lin Feng suddenly thought about a name. If the rumors were true, he really looked like that. Divine Arrow Lu Lan. Lin Feng was sure that it was Lu Lan. Except for him, who would kneel down in front of the dead disciples of the Yunhai sect. Besides, wasn't he one of the generals within the army? No wonder Protector Bei felt proud each time he mentioned Lu Lan's name. Such an outstanding student definitely deserves such recognition. This is my own business. Stand up, everyone. Lu Lan's voice was loud and resonated in the gorge. His voice didn't sound imposing or bossy. On the contrary, it sounded friendly and clear so that everyone could hear properly. General, please take good care of yourself. When Lu Lan had learnt that his army had been ordered to exterminate the Yunhai sect, he had disregarded everything and headed to the Yunhai sect. He had immediately put the harness on his horse and had ridden it for 3 days and 3 nights without sleep to arrive at the Yunhai sect as soon as possible. All the other cavalry wanted to follow him on their own free will. I order you to stand up. Lu Lan's voice was still calm. When they heard him, the cavalry stood up. They would never disobey Lu Lan. When I was 7 years old, I joined the Yunhai sect. I received a teacher and was respected, but then I left and abandoned them for the sake of the Shuiyu country. I will never forget the affection I received from other Yunhai sect members. I will never forget my dear teacher either. But now the Yunhai sect has been destroyed and my army has played a big role in that massacre. I will never forgive myself for that. When Lu Lan finished talking, he started kowtowing in front of all the corpses and hitting his head against the ground of the fighting stage. Suddenly a noise emerged. General Duan Tianlang had been premeditating this event for a long time. We have all been fooled. One of the cavalry troops said that to Lu Lan. I know that Duan Tianlang is a monster. He even ordered Fei Fei to convince the best disciples of the Yunhai sect to go to the holy courtyard of Shuiyu. But it is useless to try and find excuses. I have played a big role in this affair as well. I have been unfair to the Yunhai sect and played a part in its destruction. Lu Lan kept kowtowing and his head hit the ground of the fighting stage over and over again. Lu Lan kept kowtowing and his head hit the ground of the fighting stage over and over again. All of the troops watching this scene felt for their general. They felt powerless and hopeless in front of their general who was suffering so much. The cavalry troops all felt very close to their general. If a soldier was attacked, even if he was low-ranked, Lu Zonglan wouldn't hesitate to protect them. Lu Zonglan didn't kneel down in front of anything or anyone. He didn't even bow in front of the emperor, but at this moment, he kowtowed more than he ever had in his entire life. The Yunhai sect has given everything to me, but I escaped. How shameless can I be? Lu Zonglan looked desperate, which filled all the soldiers with emotion. They shouted in unison, "General!" A strong qi was released into the atmosphere, and he raised his arm in preparation to cripple his own cultivation. The soldiers were staring at him, and suddenly there was no movement. Lu Zonglan was as motionless as the corpses surrounding him, and there was complete silence in the gorge. "Coward!" A cold and indifferent voice filled the entire gorge. When everybody heard the voice, they looked stupefied. Coward? Was Lu Zonglan a coward? Since you abandoned the Yunhai sect, you also played a role in its destruction. You must pay with your life. These words made the soldiers extremely furious. Lin Feng was the person who had said those words to Lu Zonglan. Since he had insulted Lu Zonglan, he had to die. At that moment, an incredible force and qi moved straight towards Lin Feng's body. The soldiers on the Qixia armored horses were releasing such a strong and powerful energy. Lin Feng felt completely oppressed, and had the sensation his bones were going to explode. Only these cavalry troops were able to release such a strong qi. Lin Feng was almost collapsing under the weight of that qi. But he remained calm as before, looking at Lu Zonglan on the fighting stage of the life and death arena. You are already a walking corpse. Duan Tianlang achieved his aim long ago. No need to try and escape again. He just used you and doesn't need you anymore. All the soldiers were furious, but Lu Zonglan raised his head and looked up at the top of the gorge. You are ready to die, and your daughter Lu Fei can now become a member of the Duan family. You don't need to worry about her. Lin Feng's words were like a sharp sword that cut into Lu Zonglan. Lu Zonglan was stunned. Was his daughter Lu Fei going to marry Duan Han? When you die, maybe all those that have died for the Yunhai sect will be able to rest in peace because they will know that they have died for nothing. There was no hope for you. Each and every single word that Lin Feng said was like a sharp sword. Lu Zonglan closed his eyes and slowly put his hand down. That's right. Lu Zonglan had abandoned everything and everyone. Could it be that Lu Fei was really going to become one of the Duans, though? What was to be done if she married Duan Han? They had exterminated the Yunhai sect. So who was left to protect Lu Fei? When they saw that Lu Zonglan had put his hand down, the soldiers didn't feel angry at Lin Feng anymore. They were grateful because they understood that Lin Feng had been using these harsh words to stimulate Lu Zonglan to prevent him from crippling his own cultivation, or even ending his own life. Good that Lin Feng was here, otherwise Lu Zonglan would have probably killed himself here. But Lin Feng's words had been really harsh. Each time they had resonated in Lu Zonglan's heart, and only increased his sorrow. Take care of your general. The Yunhai sect doesn't hate or blame him. Protector Bei was always worried about him. The wife of the former patriarch also respected and admired him. She also forgave him for everything that happened in the past. Make sure that he remembers this. Lin Feng had stopped looking at Lu Zonglan and had walked towards the cavalry seated on the Qixia armored horses, and while still holding Meng Qing's hand, he said these words to the soldiers. A while after Lin Feng left, Lu Zonglan opened his eyes and a sharp and determined light flashed through them, which made his army delighted. Their general was back. Everybody help me bury my fellow sect members. Let's allow the dead to rest in peace. This is an order. Lu Zonglan's voice was calm but still firm. From today onwards, you have to guard the territory of the Yunhai sect. Without my permission, don't let anybody into its territory. If they try to enter by force, kill them without mercy. Lu Zonglan was strict with his commands. When he finished talking, everybody shouted in unison, "At your command." Lu Zonglan looked expressionless. He climbed back up onto the top of the gorge and gazed into the distance as if he was looking for Lin Feng. General. At that moment, a soldier walked towards Lu Zonglan and stopped in front of him. What is it? Asked Lu Zonglan. General, that young man earlier told me to tell you that the Yunhai sect doesn't blame or hate you. Protector Bei was worried about you every day, and that the wife of the former patriarch forgave you for everything. She also admired and respected you at the end. Lu Zonglan was standing while speechless and motionless. He raised his hand and looked at the sky. That powerful and battle-hardened man had tears flowing from his eyes. Forgive this unworthy disciple. After a while Lu Zonglan took a deep breath and stopped crying. He could see a silhouette on the horizon. Lin Feng. Lu Zonglan had never seen Lin Feng, but Lu Fei had told him a lot about him. He wanted to know what kind of young man had inspired so many people in the Yunhai sect, and also why he had just saved him from ending his own life. At that moment, Lu Zonglan gradually started to understand that Lin Feng was probably not an ordinary person. If Lin Feng was an ordinary person, then could he have used such words when talking to Lu Zonglan? If Lin Feng was an ordinary 16-year-old teenager, could he have resisted the qi of the cavalry on the Qixia armored horses without collapsing? If Lin Feng was an ordinary teenager, he wouldn't have come back to the Yunhai sect, rather, he would have left and never come back. After all, Duan Tianlang and many others wanted to kill him. Lin Feng didn't leave the Yunhai sect even though Protector Bei had told him to go to Duanren City to look for Lu Zonglan. He was never planning to leave the corpses of his sect to be defiled. He would stay and protect them so that the dead could rest easy. However, now that he had seen Lu Zonglan arrive with his troops, he had decided to leave because Lu Zonglan's army would be more capable of protecting the Yunhai sect territory than him. They were all extremely powerful and there were such a large number of them. Lin Feng knew that the imperial clan was the strongest within the Shuiyu country. But in the continent of the Nine Clouds, there were people who were even stronger than the emperor. There were people in the continent that could destroy the entire Shuiyu country if they wished to. Lin Feng wanted to reach such heights. At that moment, Lin Feng and Meng Qing were standing on a huge rock. Lin Feng saw Lu Zonglan's silhouette descending the mountain at full speed. Let's go. They jumped from the big rock and took a small road. They started moving farther away from the approaching Lu Zonglan. Aren't there many questions that you would like to ask me? Lin Feng asked Meng Qing in a low voice. If you don't tell me, I will not ask, replied Meng Qing in an indifferent tone. It seemed like her heart had never been moved before. Lin Feng wanted to know if she ever smiled or laughed. My mother says that when a man is sad, the best is to let him keep his thoughts to himself and not to ask anything. Lin Feng wasn't expecting her to continue speaking. She was staring at Lin Feng. It seemed like she wanted to verify her mother's statement and check its authenticity. Everything that you know of the outside world is what your mother has told you? Indeed, said Meng Qing while nodding. What else has your mother told you about men? Asked Lin Feng. Lin Feng had the feeling that he knew nothing about the world even though he had memories from two different worlds in Meng Qing. She only memories of the Black Wind Mountain. My mother also said that, well, none of these things are good, replied Meng Qing. Lin Feng was surprised. He looked at Meng Qing, his eyes filled with curiosity. It seemed like Meng Qing was about to tell him some private things. Could it be that her mother had decided to live in seclusion in the hinterland of the Black Wind Mountain because she had been emotionally hurt in the past? She told me how horrible and disgusting men were, but you seem to be a really good man. What my mother told me doesn't apply to you. Her beautiful face looked so cute as if she didn't understand what she was talking about. She was definitely very curious to discover the world, which is why she secretly escaped with Lin Feng. Lin Feng could not help but let out a laugh. It really felt good to laugh after everything that happened. Are there other things? What else did your mother tell you? She told me a lot of things, said Meng Qing while nodding. She then looked at Lin Feng and said, but I'm not telling you these things. The imperial city, the Shuiyu country, both were extremely vast. Billions of people were living in the imperial city, but it never looked overcrowded. The imperial city had huge roads. Several hundreds of people could walk side by side on some of its large roads in the imperial city. There were mostly pedestrians. Even those who had horses often didn't ride them in the city but led them by hand. In the imperial city, there were multiple incredibly strong cultivators who had become rich. They could gather many items by killing extremely strong ferocious beasts, and had slowly gathered a fortune. Many of them had extremely expensive horses. A few days later, it would be the inauguration of the holy courtyard of Shuiyu. All the strongest disciples of the biggest sects of the country would be there. The holy courtyard of Shuiyu was greedy and was always longing for more geniuses. Many young cultivators, from the age of 6 to the age of 18, were hoping to be able to join the holy courtyard of Shuiyu. In such conditions, they probably would be able to become a great cultivator in the future. The holy courtyard of Shuiyu was going to be the best cultivation academy in the history of the country. At that moment, some silhouettes were walking on the main road. They attracted everybody's attention. Amongst the group of people, there was a girl who was wearing red-robed. She looked very beautiful. An ice and fire chi was emerging endlessly from her body. These people all want to become members of the holy courtyard of Shuiyu. But what they don't know is that it is extremely hard to join it. Only geniuses can gain entry. How many people have what is required to join? A teenager said in a low voice. It made the girl in the red robes smile coldly. That girl wearing red robes was Lin Qian. I heard that Na Lanfeng has returned to the imperial city too. I heard that the holy courtyard of Shuiyu is really interested in her. I don't know if it's true or not. Lin Hong, who was standing next to Lin Qian, said this, which had stupefied Lin Qian. The last time they had seen they hadn't been able to battle properly to find out which of them was stronger. Lin Qian remembered the annual tournament in Yangzhou City. She couldn't help but recall that piece of trash that had been expelled from the Lin clan. He had surprised everybody at the annual tournament. He had even scared everyone with the power he held. He was truly a terrifying genius. But in Yangzhou City, a myriad of people still didn't even know Lin Feng's name. She remembered how Lin Feng had been able to leave Yangzhou City by simply taking Na Lanfeng as a hostage in front of everybody. Now that the Yunhai sect doesn't exist anymore, he is probably dead. Lin Qian didn't know if that was a good thing though. She did not understand why she had mixed feeling after hearing of his death.